What would you do if, at exactly 3 o'clock in the morning, the strongest person in the room suddenly stopped answering? The hospital doors burst open, and the doctor looked at JIMIN with a face that said the truth was worse than anything he had imagined. Before this story begins, write in the comments where you are watching from, and tell me one thing. If someone you loved had hidden their pain just to protect you, would you forgive them? Or would you break first? Because tonight, JUNGKOOK was rushed into emergency care. JIMIN screamed so hard his voice cracked, and Taehyung collapsed to the floor, crying when the diagnosis finally came out. The hallway outside the emergency room was too bright for 3 a.m. JIMIN stood barefoot in the cold hospital corridor, still wearing the black hoodie he had thrown on without thinking, his hands shaking as he stared at the closed doors. Jin kept calling his name, but JIMIN could not hear him. RM was speaking to the staff with a tight voice, trying to stay calm, trying to be the leader, but even he looked like he was about to fall apart. Suga stood near the wall, silent, jaw locked, eyes fixed on the floor. J-Hope kept pacing, whispering, "No, no, this can't be happening," like saying it enough times might change reality. And Taehyung sat frozen on the bench, face pale, holding JUNGKOOK's phone like it was evidence from a crime scene. Then the doctor stepped out. One sentence changed everything. "He has been hiding this for weeks." JIMIN turned slowly, eyes wide, and the room went quiet, because the real question was no longer whether JUNGKOOK would survive the night, but who had known the truth before JIMIN did.
The doctor's words landed like a slap across the hallway, and for 1 second nobody moved. JIMIN stared at him, not breathing properly, not blinking, not understanding why the sentence felt less like a medical update and more like an accusation. "Hiding what?" he asked, but his voice came out thin, almost broken. The doctor looked from JIMIN to RM then to Jin, like he had expected one of them to already know. That look alone made JIMIN's chest tighten. Bram stepped forward quickly, calm on the outside, but his hand was clenched at his side. "Doctor, please explain clearly." The doctor lowered his clipboard. "JUNGKOOK's condition didn't begin tonight. The signs have been there for weeks. Maybe longer. He should have been resting. He should not have been pushing his body this hard." J-Hope stopped pacing. Suga lifted his head. Jin's mouth opened, but no sound came out. Taehyung gripped JUNGKOOK's phone harder, his knuckles turning pale. JIMIN looked at every one of them, searching their faces for confusion, but what he found was worse. He found guilt. "Who knew?" JIMIN asked. Nobody answered. That silence tore through him harder than any truth could have. He took one step back, almost losing balance, and Jin reached for him, but JIMIN pulled away. "Don't touch me!" Jin froze. The hallway became smaller, tighter, every breath heavier than the last. Behind the emergency room doors, machines kept beeping in a rhythm JIMIN could not see but could feel inside his skull. "Who knew?" he repeated. Louder now. Arm shut his eyes for half a second, and that was enough. JIMIN saw it. He saw the hesitation, the decision, the secret they had been carrying without him. "I'm Junyoung," JIMIN whispered, and the name sounded like betrayal. RM opened his eyes. "JIMIN, this is not the time." "Not the time?" JIMIN gave a bitter laugh, sharp and painful. "He's in there. The doctor is saying he's been hiding something for weeks. You all look like you swallowed the truth before I got here, and you're telling me this is not the time?" Suga stepped forward, voice low. "Lower your voice. This is a hospital." JIMIN turned on him instantly. "Did you know too?" Suga did not answer fast enough. "That was another knife." JIMIN nodded slowly, his eyes wet but furious. "Of course." Taehyung suddenly stood, but his knees looked weak. "JIMIN, listen to me." JIMIN turned to him, and the air shifted. Taehyung's face was destroyed, his eyes red, his lips shaking, but JIMIN could not allow himself to feel sorry for him yet. Not when Taehyung was holding JUNGKOOK's phone like he had been trusted with something JIMIN had not. "You knew," JIMIN said. Taehyung's throat moved. "I knew he wasn't okay, and you didn't tell me?" "He begged me not to." The words came out so soft they almost disappeared, but JIMIN heard them. Everyone heard them. For a moment he looked less angry and more stunned, like his heart had been forced to stop in the middle of beating. "He begged you," JIMIN repeated. Taehyung nodded, tears slipping down his face. "He said you would blame yourself." JIMIN's expression changed completely. The anger stayed, but something underneath it cracked open. "Why would I blame myself?" No one answered again. Jin turned away. J-Hope pressed both hands against his mouth. Suga's eyes sharpened like he wanted to stop the conversation before it got worse. But it was already too late. JIMIN stepped closer to Taehyung. "Why would I blame myself, Taehyung?" Taehyung shook his head, crying harder. "I can't. You can't." JIMIN's voice rose. He might not wake up the same and you can't, the doctor interrupted, firm but careful. You need to understand. Emotional stress will not help him. We are stabilizing him now. Only one person can see him when we allow it. That sentence changed the room again. Only one person. The members looked at each other, and for the first time that night, the conflict was not about what had happened, but who had the right to stand beside JUNGKOOK when he opened his eyes. Jin immediately said, Jimin should go. RM looked at him. We don't know what JUNGKOOK would want right now. Jimin turned slowly. What did you just say? RM's face tightened. I'm saying we should think carefully. You're saying I might not be the person he wants. RM did not answer. Suga stepped between them before Jimin could move closer. Stop twisting it. Jimin looked at Suga like he had become a stranger. Then say it straight. Suga's jaw flexed. JUNGKOOK made choices. Some of them involved keeping distance from you. The hallway went silent again. But this silence was different. This one had teeth. Jimin looked like someone had struck him in front of everyone. He turned toward the emergency room doors, then back to the members, and his voice dropped until it was almost calm. So that's what this is. You all decided I was the problem. No, Jin said quickly. That's not true. Then why am I the last one to know? Jimin asked. Why was Taeyoung holding his phone? Why was Namjoon talking to the doctor like he already knew what to ask? Why did Yoongi just say, JUNGKOOK kept distance from me? Like that was some group decision? J-Hope finally broke. Because JUNGKOOK asked us to protect you. Jimin turned to him. Hoseok looked horrified. Like the words had escaped before he could stop them. Protect me from what? Jimin asked. J-Hope's eyes filled. From the video. The word video shifted everything. Even the doctor glanced up. Jimin's face went blank. What video? Aram cursed under his breath. Suga closed his eyes. Jin whispered, Hosyoka. But Jimin was no longer looking at anyone except J-Hope. What video? He repeated. Taeyoung lowered himself back onto the bench like his body had given up. Jungkook's phone lit up in his hand. One notification, then another. Then another. Saw it and moved fast. Tae, give me the phone. Taeyoung looked at the screen and his face drained of color. It's already out. Jimin's heartbeat seemed to slam into his ears. What is out? Taeyoung turned the screen around with shaking hands. There, under the glow of the hospital hallway, headline was spreading across social media faster than anyone could stop it. A leaked clip. A private argument. Jungkook's voice, Jimin's name, and a caption designed to destroy them both. Jimin stared at the screen, and the first visible emotion on his face was not fear, it was recognition. The clip was only 13 seconds long, but it did enough damage to feel endless. It showed JUNGKOOK in a dim practice room weeks earlier, leaning against the mirror, breathing hard, face tense, while someone off-camera asked why he kept defending Jimin. JUNGKOOK's answer was cut badly, twisted brutally, but his voice was clear, because if they find out what really happened, Jimin won't survive it. Then the clip ended. No context. No explanation. Just JUNGKOOK's exhaustion, Jimin's name, and a sentence sharp enough for strangers to build a war around. Within minutes, fans were fighting, media accounts were posting, anonymous blogs were inventing stories, and the hospital hallway became the center of a storm that none of them had chosen. Jimin could not look away from the phone. Play it again, he said. Taeyoung shook his head. Don't play it again. Jimin snatched the phone from his hand so fast Taeyoung flinched. He replayed the clip once, twice, then a third time, each repetition digging deeper. JUNGKOOK's voice sounded tired, protective, almost angry. But the worst part was not the sentence. The worst part was that Jimin remembered that night. He remembered JUNGKOOK coming back to the dorm late, silent, refusing dinner, refusing to look him in the eye. Jimin had asked if something happened. JUNGKOOK had said no. Jimin had believed him because he wanted to believe him. Now that memory felt rotten. Who recorded this? Jimin asked. Arm immediately answered. We don't know. Don't lie to me again. Face tightened. I'm not lying. Suga took the phone from Jimin's loose grip and looked at the clip carefully, his eyes narrowing. This angle is from inside the practice room. Staff, Jin asked. Or someone with access, Suga said. J-Hope looks sick. That means someone close. Jimin laughed once, cold and empty. Of course it does. It always is. Arm glanced at him. What does that mean? Jimin did not answer. Instead, he looked at the doctor. Can I see him? The doctor hesitated. Not yet. Then tell me what he has. The doctor's expression became more guarded. I can only explain in detail to authorized family or designated contacts. Stepped in. We are listed. Jimin turned to him. You are listed? RM looked uncomfortable. For emergencies, yes. And me, nobody answered. Jimin's face changed again, slower this time, like a wound opening under pressure. Am I listed? Jin stepped forward carefully. Jimin, emergency forms are complicated. They were updated during schedule changes. It doesn't mean, am I listed? Silence answered for him. Jimin stared at him, then at the others, and his voice went flat. So I'm not just the last to know. I'm not even the person they call. Taeyoung stood again. That wasn't JUNGKOOK trying to hurt you. Then what was it? Jimin snapped. Protection again? Everyone keeps saying that word like it makes betrayal clean. Taehyung wiped his face with the back of his hand, suddenly angry through the tears. You think you're the only one hurting? I sat with him when he couldn't breathe after practice. I watched him pretend he was fine when his hands were shaking. I begged him to stop. He told me if you knew, you would tear yourself apart trying to fix him. Froze. Taehyung's anger collapsed immediately, replaced by panic. He looked at RM. RM shook his head once, a silent warning. Jimin saw it. No, he said, pointing between them. Don't do that. Don't look at each other like I'm not standing here. Suga's phone rang. He looked at the screen and his expression darkened. Management. RM took the call before anyone could argue, stepping a few feet away but not far enough for Jimin to miss the words. No statement yet. No. Do not confirm the hospital. Who leaked the location? Lock it down. I said lock it down. He ended the call, face hard. There are reporters outside. Jin swore under his breath. J-Hope looked toward the elevator. Already? Someone tipped them off, Suga said. Jimin looked at the emergency doors. JUNGKOOK was inside fighting whatever his body had hidden for weeks, and outside, cameras were gathering to turn him into a headline. Something in Jimin shifted. The shock did not disappear, but it hardened into direction. I'm going out. Jin grabbed his arm. Absolutely not. Jimin pulled free. They want a story? I'll give them one. RM blocked his path. You walk out there emotional, they will destroy you and JUNGKOOK together. They're already doing it. Then don't help them. Jimin stepped closer, eyes blazing. You lost the right to tell me what to do when you decided I didn't deserve the truth. RM's control cracked. We didn't tell you because the last time JUNGKOOK chose you over himself, you almost walked away from the group. The sentence exploded through the hallway. Jin whispered RM's name in warning, but it was too late. Jimin went still. Taehyung covered his face. J-Hope looked down. Suga stared at RM like even he had gone too far. The doctor shifted awkwardly but did not leave. Jimin's voice was barely audible. That was between me and JUNGKOOK. RM's eyes were wet now, though his voice stayed firm. No, it stopped being only between you two when he started collapsing behind closed doors and refusing help because he thought saving you mattered more than saving himself. Jimin's lips parted, but nothing came out. For the first time since the doctor stepped into the hallway, he looked truly afraid. Not angry, not betrayed, afraid, because beneath every secret, every lie, every hidden medical form, there was one brutal possibility he had been refusing to touch. JUNGKOOK had not been hiding his condition from Jimin because he did not trust him. He had been hiding it because Jimin was part of the reason he got worse. The waiting room was moved to a private floor after security confirmed reporters had reached the hospital lobby. The members were escorted through a service hallway with dim lights and white walls that seemed to stretch forever. Jimin walked at the back, refusing to stand near RM, refusing to look at Taehyung, refusing every hand that tried to steady him. He could still hear JUNGKOOK's voice from the leaked clip repeating inside him like a punishment. If they find out what really happened, Jimin won't survive it. What really happened? That phrase had weight. That phrase had history. In the private waiting room, the air smelled like coffee nobody wanted and disinfectant nobody could ignore. A television mounted in the corner played muted news coverage, but the scrolling headline was enough. JUNGKOOK rushed to hospital amid leak controversy. Jimin reacts. BTS silence raises questions. Jin grabbed the remote and turned it off so violently the battery cover flew off. Enough! J-Hope sat down and buried his face in both hands. Suga stood by the window, checking messages, his expression colder with every new update. RM started making calls again, speaking in low, precise sentences, damage control wrapped around panic. Taehyung stayed near the door, arms folded tight around himself, eyes swollen. And Jimin stood in the center of the room like he did not belong to any of them anymore. Tell me, he said. Nobody moved. We are done waiting. Tell me what JUNGKOOK meant. RM ended his call slowly. Not like this. Jimin smiled without humor. There it is again, not the time. Not like this, not here, not now. How many ways can you all say never? Jin looked at RM. He deserves to know. Suga's eyes flicked toward Jin. Careful. Jin turned on him. No, I'm done being careful. Being careful is how we ended up here. The room shifted. Jin rarely raised his voice like that, and when he did, everyone listened. He stepped closer to Jimin, his face full of exhaustion. There was an internal review 3 weeks ago. Jimin's brow furrowed. For what? Jin swallowed. For the stage incident in Osaka. Jimin's stomach dropped. Osaka. The word pulled him back to flashing lights, a packed stadium, a lift malfunction, a sudden blackout backstage. JUNGKOOK grabbing him by the waist and throwing him sideways before a metal rig dropped where Jimin had been standing seconds earlier. Everyone had called it a technical error. The company had buried it under professional language. The members had been told not to discuss it publicly. JUNGKOOK had brushed it off, joked about being fast, then disappeared for 2 hours after the show. Jimin remembered finding him alone in the dressing room, head down, one hand pressed against his chest, refusing to talk. That was an accident. Jimin said. But even as he said it, his voice lacked belief. Suga turned from the window. It may not have been. The words punched the air from the room. J-Hope lifted his head sharply. Taehyung whispered Hyung. Arm closed his eyes. Jin looked like he regretted speaking but refused to stop. The rig was checked before rehearsal twice. The failure pattern didn't match normal malfunction. Jimin stared at him. You're saying someone tried to hurt me. We're saying we don't know. Corrected. But JUNGKOOK believes someone was targeting you. Jimin looked toward the hospital door that separated him from the only person who had acted while everyone else had analyzed. So he got hurt saving me. He didn't want you thinking that, Taehyung said quietly. Jimin turned to him. Taehyung's face folded with guilt. That night he told me not to say anything. He said you were already blaming yourself for everything, for the arguments, for the pressure, for the distance between you two. He said if you found out the rig might have been meant for you, you would never step on stage again. And he kept performing, Jimin asked. His voice was shaking now. After that, RM answered carefully. He insisted. Why did you let him? Suga's expression hardened. You think we didn't try to stop him? Jimin stepped toward him. Clearly not hard enough. Suga moved closer too, eyes sharp. You want someone to blame? Fine. Blame all of us. But don't act like JUNGKOOK listens when he decides someone else matters more. Jimin's face twisted. Someone else? You, Suga said bluntly. Always you. The room fell silent. There was no cruelty in Suga's voice, but there was frustration, old and heavy. Jimin looked away first, Taehyung whispered. He changed after Osaka. Jimin closed his eyes. I know. No, Taehyung said. You don't. He started sleeping outside your door. Jimin opened his eyes. What? Taehyung nodded, ashamed. Not every night. But enough. He said if something happened, he wanted to be close. Jimin's face crumpled for a second before he forced it back. Why did I know? Jin's voice softened. Because you were avoiding him. That truth landed quietly, but it hurt more because it could not be denied. After Osaka, Jimin had pulled away, not because he did not care, but because JUNGKOOK's protection had scared him. It had felt too intense, too self-destructive, too much like the old pattern they had promised to escape. JUNGKOOK gave everything. Jimin received it and panicked, so he created distance, thinking space would keep them both safe. Instead, JUNGKOOK had filled that distance with secrets. Arm's phone buzzed again. He looked at the screen and his face changed. The second clip dropped. Everyone turned. Second, J-Hope said, standing. Arm played it on speaker before anyone could stop him. The audio was distorted, but JUNGKOOK's voice was clear enough. If Jimin finds out Taehyung saw the message first, he'll never forgive him. Taehyung stopped breathing. Jimin turned slowly. What message? Taehyung's lips trembled. He looked cornered now, completely cornered. Suga moved like he wanted to step in, but Jin shook his head. No more protecting, no more hiding. Jimin walked toward Taehyung one slow step at a time. What message did you see first? Taehyung looked at JUNGKOOK's phone, then at Jimin, and finally broke. The warning, he whispered. Before Osaka. I saw the warning before the stage incident happened. Jimin did not shout. That was what scared everyone most. He did not throw anything, did not rush at Taehyung, did not collapse. He simply stood there, staring at his friend, and the silence that followed Taehyung's confession felt like punishment. You saw a warning, Jimin said carefully. Each word controlled. Before the rig dropped, Taehyung shook his head fast, panic rising. I didn't understand it. It wasn't clear. It came from an unknown account. It said, tell Jimin not to stand under the left rig during the bridge. I thought it was some creepy fan message. One of those threats people send to scare us. We get those all the time. I sent it to security. Arm spoke quietly. He did. Jimin did not look at him. And security did what? Nobody answered fast enough. Jimin's calm started to fracture. What did security do? Suga's voice was low. They checked the wrong side. Jimin's eyes closed. J-Hope. It was chaotic. The stage map had been updated. Left from audience view, left from performer view, there was confusion. Stop, Jimin said. J-Hope stopped instantly. Jimin opened his eyes and looked at Taehyung again. Why didn't you tell me after? Taehyung's tears returned. Because JUNGKOOK asked me not to. He said if you knew I had seen it first, you would blame me. He said it would break the team. Jimin's jaw tightened. So he carried it instead. Yes, Taehyung whispered. He carried it. He kept saying it wasn't my fault. He kept saying he moved fast enough, so it didn't matter. But it did matter. It mattered every day. Jimin looked around the room and every face confirmed some piece of the story. Arm knew about the review. Suga knew about the clips. Jin knew the emotional cost. J-Hope knew JUNGKOOK had been protecting him. Taehyung knew about the warning. And Jimin had known nothing except the distance, the cold looks, the unanswered messages, the way JUNGKOOK kept saying he was tired but refused to let Jimin close. He hated me, Jimin said suddenly. Jin looked startled. No, he did. Jimin, no. He wouldn't look at me. He stopped coming to my room. He stopped asking if I had eaten. Stopped sending stupid late-night videos. I thought he hated me. Taehyung shook his head, crying openly now. He was scared. Of me? For you. Jimin looked like he wanted to reject it. But the truth was too consistent now. JUNGKOOK had not gone cold because he stopped caring. He had gone cold because caring had become dangerous. Outside the waiting room, footsteps approached quickly. A hospital administrator entered with 2 security guards, face tense. "We need to move you again." RM stood. "Why?" "The location of this floor has been posted online. People are gathering near the side entrance." "How?" The administrator hesitated. "Someone inside the hospital may have shared information." Suga pocketed his phone. "Or someone is tracking us through his phone." Everyone turned toward JUNGKOOK's phone in Taeyoung's hand. Taeyoung went pale. "I turned off location." Suga walked over, took the phone, and checked it with frightening focus. His face changed. "There's a shared device linked." RM stepped closer. "Whose?" Suga looked up. "Unknown tablet. Connected 2 days ago." Jimin's skin went cold. Someone had access to his account. "Looks like it," Suga said. "Messages, location, maybe recordings." J-Hope looked toward the dark television screen. "That's how the clips leaked," Jin whispered, "and how they knew the hospital." The administrator urged them to move, but nobody did, because the story had shifted again. This was no longer just a hidden illness, no longer just a team secret, no longer just JUNGKOOK sacrificing himself until his body failed. Someone had been watching him. Someone had entered his private world, taken his words, twisted them, and released them at the exact moment he was least able to defend himself. Jimin stepped toward Suga. "Can you see when it connected?" Suga tapped fast. 2 days ago, around 1:17 a. Taeyoung's breath caught. That was after the dorm argument. Jimin turned. "What dorm argument?" Rem looked furious now, but not at Jimin, at the situation, at the leak, at himself. "JUNGKOOK and I argued. About me?" Jimin asked. RM hesitated. "About whether you should be told everything." Jimin let out a bitter breath. "And let me guess." He said no. "He said he would tell you himself when he knew you were safe." The door opened again before anyone could answer. This time it was the doctor. Everyone stood at once. Jimin's anger vanished under fear. "Is he awake?" The doctor looked exhausted briefly. Jimin stepped forward. "Can I see him?" The doctor paused, and that pause nearly destroyed him. He asked for someone. The room froze. Jimin's lips parted. Taeyoung's hand flew to his mouth. Jin closed his eyes like he was praying. RM stood completely still. Suga's expression gave nothing away, but his shoulders tightened. "Who?" Jimin asked, barely breathing. The doctor looked at him with pity, and somehow that was worse than cruelty. He asked for Taeyoung. Jimin did not move. Taeyoung shook his head immediately. No, I can't. Jimin should go." "He asked for you," the doctor repeated. Jimin stared at Taeyoung, and the pain in his face was so raw that even Suga looked away. For weeks, JUNGKOOK had hidden the truth from him. For hours, everyone had protected him from answers, and now, after everything, when JUNGKOOK finally woke up, he had called for the one person Jimin felt most betrayed by. Taeyoung took one step toward Jimin, trembling. "I won't go if you tell me not to." Jimin looked at the emergency doors. His voice came out quiet, hollow, almost unrecognizable. "Go!" Taeyoung broke down. "Jimin, go before he stops asking." Taeyoung turned and followed the doctor, crying so hard he could barely walk. The door closed behind him, and Jimin stood alone in the waiting room with the people who had kept him outside the truth. Then JUNGKOOK's phone, still in Suga's hand, lit up with a new message from the unknown link device. Suga read it, and his face went completely still. RM noticed. "What?" Suga looked at Jimin. "It says he asked for the wrong person."
The message on JUNGKOOK's phone did not look dramatic. No long threat, no name, no strange symbol. Just one sentence glowing on the screen in a clean gray bubble, calm enough to feel cruel. He asked for the wrong person. Suga held the phone without moving, and for a moment the whole waiting room seemed to shrink around those 6 words. RM reached for it, but Suga pulled it back, eyes still locked on the screen. "Don't touch anything yet." Jin stepped closer. "Is it from the link device?" Suga nodded once. J-Hope's voice trembled. "So they're watching us right now?" Nobody answered, because nobody wanted to be the person who said yes. Jimin stood apart from them, still facing the door Taeyoung had disappeared through. He had heard the message, but his face did not change. That was worse than crying. His expression was too still, like something inside him had shut down to keep him standing. RM moved toward him carefully. "Jimin?" Jimin did not look at him. "Don't. This is bigger than what happened between us. Everything is bigger when you need me quiet." RM flinched, but he took the hit. "There is an active security breach. Someone has access to JUNGKOOK's account, maybe his messages, maybe his location. We need to handle this before it gets worse." Jimin turned then, slowly, and his eyes were empty in a way none of them had seen before. "It already got worse." He woke up and asked for Taeyoung. Jin stepped between them, his voice low. "That doesn't mean what you think it means." Jimin gave a short, broken laugh. "You don't know what I think it means." Suga looked up from the phone. "It means someone wanted you to hear it. The sentence cut through the emotion cleanly. Jimin looked at him. What? Suga held the phone up but did not hand it over. The message came seconds after the doctor said JUNGKOOK asked for Taehyung. Not before. Not 10 minutes later. Seconds. Whoever sent this either has someone inside the hospital, access to a camera, or access to our conversations. J-Hope looked around the room as if the walls themselves had become suspicious. There are no cameras in here, right? RM scanned the ceiling. Private waiting rooms usually don't. Suga's jaw tightened. Usually. Jin turned toward the administrator, who was still waiting by the door with security. Check this room. Now. The administrator looked offended for half a second, then saw Jin's face, and chose survival over pride. The security guards moved along the walls, checking corners, vents, the television, the smoke detector. Jimin watched them without blinking. The hospital, which should have felt like a place of rescue, now felt like a trap, with white lights and polished floors. Every door could open to someone with a camera. Every nurse who passed could be innocent or bought. Every buzz from a phone could be another cut. We need rules, RM said finally. Suga glanced at him. Not company rules. Actual survival rules. RM nodded. No one leaves alone. No one answers unknown calls. No one speaks near staff unless necessary. All phones off except one secure device. We use written notes for anything sensitive until Yonggi checks the room. Jimin looked at him with quiet contempt. Now you want everyone honest. RM met his stare. Now I want everyone alive. The word alive did what anger could not. It punched through Jimin's face. For a second, he looked 19 again, scared behind the stage, clutching at JUNGKOOK's sleeve after a performance went wrong. Then it vanished. Fine, he said. Rule 1. Nobody decides what I can know anymore. RM did not answer fast enough. Jimin stepped closer. Say it. The leader's pride and guilt fought across his face. Finally, RM said, No one keeps information from you. Jimin looked at Jin. You too? Jin nodded. Yes. Jimin looked at J-Hope. Hoseok swallowed and nodded quickly. Yes. Jimin looked at Suga. Suga's eyes narrowed. I never liked hiding it from you. That's not an answer. Suga held his stare. Yes. Last, Jimin looked at the door where Taehyung had gone. His voice dropped. And when he comes back, he says it too. The doctor had not returned. Taehyung had been inside with JUNGKOOK for almost 8 minutes, and every second stretched like an accusation. Jimin's mind kept building images he did not want. JUNGKOOK weak under hospital lights, Taehyung holding his hand, JUNGKOOK whispering something meant only for him. Something Jimin had lost the right to hear. The linked phone buzzed again. Suga read the message silently. His face became colder. What does it say? RM asked. Suga did not answer. Jimin walked over and snatched the phone before anyone could stop him. This time Suga let him. The new message read, If Jimin walks into that room, JUNGKOOK will remember why he hid everything. Jin whispered, Who is this? J-Hope covered his mouth. RM's expression hardened into something dangerous. But Jimin barely reacted. He stared at the sentence, and instead of breaking, he began to focus. Something sharp entered his eyes. They don't just want us scared. Suga watched him. No, Jimin looked up. They want me away from him. RM nodded slowly. That seems obvious now. Jimin turned toward the hospital door. Then I know what I'm doing next. Jin stepped forward. Jimin, don't make a decision from pain. I'm not. His voice was low, steady. I'm making one from pattern. The clips make JUNGKOOK look unstable. The message makes Taehyung look chosen. The timing makes me look unwanted. Whoever this is, they understand exactly where to cut. They know our history. Suga's gaze sharpened with approval despite the tension. Good. Keep going. Jimin looked at JUNGKOOK's phone again. They knew Taehyung saw the warning. They knew about the dorm argument. They knew JUNGKOOK asked for Taehyung. That means the leak is close, but not just physically close. Emotionally close. Someone has been collecting moments. J-Hope's face twisted. That's disgusting. No, Jimin said. That's patient. The room went quiet because he was right. This was not chaos. This was a plan unfolding in stages, each reveal designed to turn them against each other before JUNGKOOK could explain. The injustice had been that JIMIN was kept outside the truth. The new danger was that someone had built a whole trap around that exclusion. The administrator returned, uncomfortable. We found no recording device in the room. Suga did not look relieved. That doesn't clear anyone. RM turned to hospital security. We need a staff access log for this floor, the emergency unit, and JUNGKOOK's room. The administrator hesitated. That requires approval. Jin stepped forward, no longer soft, no longer the Hyung who smoothed arguments over dinner. Then approve it. The administrator stiffened. Sir, there are procedures. Jin's voice dropped. A patient's private information has been leaked while under your care. Reporters found restricted areas. Someone is sending messages from a compromised device. Do not talk to me about procedures like they protect anyone. The administrator went pale and stepped out to make calls. JIMIN watched Jin with a flicker of surprise. Jin saw it but did not soften. You're not the only one angry. Before JIMIN could answer, the door opened again. Taehyung came out first, and whatever had happened inside had changed him. His crying had stopped, but his face looked wrecked, like JUNGKOOK had handed him something too heavy to carry. The doctor followed. Taehyung's eyes found JIMIN's immediately, and he stopped in the doorway. He's asking for you now. JIMIN did not move. The words he had wanted minutes ago now felt dangerous. Why? Taehyung swallowed. Because he thinks you're leaving. JIMIN's hand tightened around the phone. Another message appeared before anyone spoke. Don't go in unless you're ready to hear what he chose over you. JIMIN read it, then looked at Taehyung. What did he say to you? Taehyung's face broke open with fear. He said the warning before Osaka didn't come from a stranger. RM went still. Suga stepped closer. Jin's face drained. JIMIN's voice was almost silent. Then who sent it? Taehyung looked at JUNGKOOK's door, then back at him. JUNGKOOK thinks it came from one of us. JIMIN walked into JUNGKOOK's room with the phone still in his hand, and the sentence still burning in his head. One of us. The room was dimmer than the hallway, quieter too, but not peaceful. Nothing felt peaceful when JUNGKOOK lay under white hospital sheets, too still for someone who always looked ready to move, run, fight, protect. He was awake, but only barely. His eyes were half open, his lips dry, his face pale under the soft monitor glow. The sight hit JIMIN so hard that all the anger he had prepared scattered for one dangerous second. He stopped near the doorway and gripped the frame. JUNGKOOK turned his head slightly, as if even that cost him. Their eyes met. No headline, no leaked clip, no members, no hospital security. Just the two of them and all the things they had failed to say. JUNGKOOK tried to speak, but the first sound was rough. JIMIN moved before he could stop himself, crossing to the bedside. Don't! JUNGKOOK's mouth tightened. You came! JIMIN looked down at him, and his voice shook despite his effort to control it. You asked for Taehyung first. JUNGKOOK closed his eyes. Pain crossed his face, not from the monitors, not from the IV line, but from that sentence. I had to. That's not an answer. JUNGKOOK opened his eyes again. He had the piece I couldn't say in front of you. JIMIN laughed quietly, but there was no humor in it. Everyone has pieces except me. JUNGKOOK looked away. That hurt more than the words. JIMIN leaned closer. Look at me. JUNGKOOK did not. JIMIN's voice cracked. After everything, you still won't look at me? Slowly, JUNGKOOK turned back. His eyes were wet now, furious and exhausted at once. If I look at you too long, I start wanting to apologize instead of warn you. Then apologize after. JUNGKOOK swallowed. The diagnosis is serious. JIMIN's body went cold. I know. No, you don't. JUNGKOOK tried to shift, winced, and JIMIN's hand lifted automatically to help. He stopped himself before touching him. JUNGKOOK saw it. His face flickered. They said my heart reacted to stress like it was under attack. My body has been burning through itself for weeks. If I keep going like this, if I get hit with another shock, another schedule, another panic episode, it could become permanent, maybe worse. JIMIN's eyes filled instantly, but he blinked hard. Why didn't you tell me? Jungkook's answer came too fast, like he had repeated it to himself for days. Because you would stop living to keep me alive, Jimin flinched. Jungkook's voice grew rougher. Don't deny it. You would cancel everything. You would sit next to me every hour. You would blame Osaka, blame the argument, blame yourself, and then you would disappear inside guilt until there was nothing left of you. Jimin stared at him. You don't get to decide that. I know. No, you don't. Jimin stepped closer, anger rising again because fear had nowhere else to go. You keep saying you protected me, but you didn't protect me. You left me outside every door. You let me think you were tired of me. You let me think I had become a burden. Jungkook's face twisted. You were never a burden. Then why did it feel like being punished? Jungkook had no answer. The monitor filled the gap with a steady sound that made Jimin want to scream. After a moment, Jungkook whispered, because I was scared that if I stayed close, whoever sent the warning would use you to finish breaking me. Jimin froze. What does that mean? Jungkook's fingers curled weakly against the sheet. The warning before Osaka. I thought it was about you, at first. But later I realized it was timed too perfectly. It didn't just stop the accident. It made Taeyoung responsible. It made me the rescuer. It made you the target. It changed all of us in one night. Jimin sat slowly in the chair beside the bed. You think the warning was planted? Jungkook nodded faintly. I think someone wanted me to save you in public, then destroy myself in private. The room seemed to tilt. Jimin's anger had been built around the idea that Jungkook had hidden a threat. Now the threat itself looked like bait. Why? He asked. Jungkook looked toward the door. Because they know my rules. Your rules? If you're in danger, I move first. If someone attacks the team, I take the hit. If you look like you might fall apart, I shut up. Jimin's face tightened. Those aren't rules. That's self-destruction. Jungkook gave the smallest bitter smile. That's what Yoongi said. Jimin looked down at the phone in his hand. The unknown device had gone silent since he entered the room, and somehow that felt worse. He placed its screen down on the bedside table. Taehyung said you think the warning came from one of us. Jungkook's eyes sharpened with what little strength he had left. Not one of the members. Jimin released a breath he had not realized he was holding. Jungkook continued, but someone inside our circle. Someone who can access rooms, schedules, arguments, private accounts. Someone who knows the emotional map better than security protocols. Jimin absorbed that. Staff. Jungkook did not confirm. He did not need to. Do you know who? Jungkook closed his eyes. I have a guess. Tell me. Not until Namjoon hears it too. Jimin went still. You still trust him more than me? Jungkook's eyes opened, wounded. This is not about trust. It feels like it. Namjoon has the access logs. Yoongi has the device trail. You have the motive. Jimin stared at him. What motive? Jungkook's voice dropped. Me. That one word changed the room. Jimin did not understand at first. Then slowly, horribly, pieces began to connect. The leaked clips were not just about Jimin. The messages were not just trying to keep Jimin away. The diagnosis had dropped at the same time as the scandal, because Jungkook was vulnerable. The real target might not be Jimin at all. It might be the person who always ran toward danger until his body finally refused. Someone is punishing you, Jimin said. Jungkook looked at him, and the silence was answer enough. Jimin leaned back, breath uneven. For what? Jungkook's eyes shifted toward the door again. For choosing you. The words hit both of them. Jimin's mouth parted. Jungkook looked like he regretted saying it, but he did not take it back. Outside the room, muffled voices rose. RM's voice. Then Suga's. Then a stranger's sharper tone. Jimin stood immediately. Jungkook grabbed his wrist with surprising urgency. His grip was weak but desperate. Jimin. Jimin looked down. What? Jungkook's eyes were fierce now despite everything. No matter what they show you next, remember I never chose distance because I stopped loving you. The word love hung between them, dangerous and quiet, Not romantic in a way that needed spectacle, not simple enough to label, but deep enough to ruin both of them. Jimin's face cracked. He covered Jungkook's hand with his own, just once, just long enough to answer without speaking. Then the door opened. RM stepped in with Suga behind him, both faces grave. Between them stood a woman in a hospital badge and a black coat Jimin recognized immediately. She was not hospital staff. She was from the company's crisis team. Her name was Han Seo-yeon, and she had managed every scandal they had survived for the last 5 years. She looked at Jungkook, then at Jimin, then at the phone on the table. "Before anyone says another word," she said, "there is a rule you all need to understand." Jimin's eyes narrowed. "What rule?" Seo-yeon's face did not move. "If this becomes a criminal investigation, the company will separate Jimin and Jungkook publicly and privately until the source is found." Jungkook's grip tightened around Jimin's wrist. Jimin looked at her like he had finally found an enemy with a face. "Try it," he said. Seo-yeon did not react to Jimin's threat, which made him hate her faster. She had the kind of calm that came from years of stepping into disasters after everyone else had already lost control. Her hair was tied back neatly, her coat was clean, her eyes sharp enough to make kindness feel like a negotiation. She looked at Jungkook's hand around Jimin's wrist, then at the monitor, then back at RM. "He should not be in a confrontation right now," Jimin laughed once. "Then why did you bring one into his room?" RM cut in before it turned explosive. "Seo-yeon, explain why you're here." She removed a tablet from her bag. "Because this stopped being a private medical emergency when the second clip leaked and the hospital location spread. The company's legal team believes the leak involves unauthorized access to private devices and confidential schedules. That means everyone with proximity becomes a potential source until cleared." J-Hope appeared in the doorway behind her, face pale. Jin stood beside him, arms crossed. Taehyung stayed behind them, eyes fixed on Jungkook's hand, still gripping Jimin. Suga leaned against the wall, quiet, observing everything. Jimin noticed all of it. The room was too full, too tense, too late to pretend this was only about health. "Everyone with proximity?" Jin asked coldly. "Including us?" Seo-yeon did not soften. "Including everyone." Taehyung's face crumpled. "You think one of us did this?" "I think whoever did this wants you to ask that question until trust collapses." Suga's mouth tightened slightly, as if he respected the answer even while disliking her. Seo-yeon tapped the tablet. "The rule is simple. No one speaks publicly. No one posts. No one leaves with Jungkook's device. No one visits him alone without security logging entry. And until we determine whether the leak is targeting a specific relationship dynamic, Jimin and Jungkook cannot be seen together outside controlled settings." Jimin's eyes flashed. "Relationship dynamic," Seo-yeon met his stare. "That is the clean term." Jungkook's hand slipped from Jimin's wrist, not because he wanted to let go, but because he was too weak to keep holding on. Jimin noticed and moved closer, but Seo-yeon stepped slightly into his path. "Do not make this worse by giving them the image they want." Jimin looked down at her shoes blocking him from Jungkook's bed. When he spoke, his voice was low and dangerous. "Move," RM said. "Jimin." "No." Jimin did not look away from Seo-yeon. "Everyone keeps deciding. The safest version of my life is the one where I stand far away from him. He nearly destroyed himself under that rule. I'm done obeying it." Seo-yeon's expression remained professional, but her voice sharpened. "Your feelings are not the only variable in this room. Neither is your brand strategy." That landed. Jin's eyebrows lifted faintly. Suga looked down, almost hiding a grim smile. RM looked like he wanted to scold Jimin and agree with him at the same time. Seo-yeon closed the tablet cover. "I am not here to protect an image. I am here because the person leaking these clips is shaping a narrative faster than the truth can move. They want Jimin isolated, Jungkook unstable, Taehyung guilty, Namjoon controlling, and the rest of you divided. If you give them chaos, they win." Jungkook's voice cut through, quiet but firm. "Then stop separating the only person they're trying to keep from me." Everyone turned. It cost him to speak. It showed in the way his breath shortened and his eyes tightened, but his gaze stayed locked on Seo-yeon. "Jungkook," RM warned softly. JUNGKOOK ignored him. They sent the warning because they knew I would protect JIMIN. They leaked the clip because they knew JIMIN would feel betrayed. They messaged the phone because they knew I asked for TAE first. This whole thing is built around predicting us, so change the pattern. Seo-yeon studied him. And what pattern do you suggest? JUNGKOOK looked at JIMIN. The room seemed to hold its breath. We stopped pretending distance makes us safer. JIMIN's face shifted, pain and relief colliding too quickly to settle. Tae-hyung looked down like the words had gone through him. J-Hope wiped his eyes. Jin exhaled slowly. RM stared at JUNGKOOK with something like fear, not because he disagreed, but because he understood the consequence. Suga broke the silence. He's right. Seo-yeon turned to him. Suga held up JUNGKOOK's phone. Whoever linked the device expected us to react by removing JIMIN. The messages are written to provoke exactly that. The fastest way to expose them is to stop reacting on script. RM crossed his arms. Meaning? Meaning we feed them a controlled contradiction. Suga's eyes moved to JIMIN. Let them think JIMIN is being removed. Quietly keep him close. Watch who moves. Seo-yeon considered it. A decoy separation. JIMIN's stomach twisted. So I pretend to abandon him, JUNGKOOK answered before anyone else could. No. His voice was faint but sharp. Not abandon. Hunt. The word settled over the room like a new title. The Hunter and the Rules. JIMIN looked at him, and something passed between them that the others could feel but not enter. JUNGKOOK had spent weeks being hunted by stress, secrecy, guilt, and an invisible hand inside their circle. Now, from a hospital bed, he was asking JIMIN to become the thing their enemy did not expect, not the wounded one, not the protected one, but the person who could walk into the trap with open eyes. Seo-yeon opened the tablet again. If we do this, there are conditions. JIMIN did not look at her. Say them. You do not improvise in front of cameras. You do not accuse anyone without proof. You do not visit him unless the room is cleared. You do not carry his phone. You do not confront staff alone. And you do not let emotion decide timing. JIMIN finally turned to her. And my condition? Seo-yeon waited. No one lies to me. Not you. Not management. Not the members. Not him. His eyes flicked to JUNGKOOK on the last word. JUNGKOOK accepted it with a small nod. No more lies. Tae-hyung stepped forward from the doorway, voice shaking. Then I need to say something. Everyone turned to him. He looked at JIMIN, not JUNGKOOK. There was another message. After Osaka. I deleted it. JIMIN went completely still. RM's head snapped toward Tae-hyung. Jin whispered, T-A-E. Suga's eyes narrowed. What message? Tae-hyung's face was wet again, but this time he forced himself to continue. It came 2 days after the stage incident. Same unknown account. It said, he moved exactly like I knew he would. I panicked. I thought if JUNGKOOK saw it, he would do something reckless. So I deleted it before anyone else read it. JIMIN stared at him, and the betrayal became something deeper than anger. You deleted evidence. Tae-hyung nodded, crying silently. Yes. JUNGKOOK closed his eyes. RM looked like the room had fallen out from under him. J-Hope leaned against the doorframe. Jin's hand went to his forehead. Seo-yeon's professional mask cracked just slightly. Suga stepped closer to Tae-hyung. Can you recover it? Tae-hyung shook his head helplessly. I don't know. JIMIN's voice was quiet. Why are you telling us now? Tae-hyung looked at him, devastated. Because JUNGKOOK said no more lies, and I can't let him be the only one punished for trying to protect someone. The sentence hit hard because it was honest. Ugly, late, damaging, but honest. JIMIN turned away, trying to breathe. Then JUNGKOOK's monitor changed rhythm for a second, enough for the doctor outside to look in sharply. JIMIN moved toward him instinctively. Seo-yeon stepped back this time and did not block him. JUNGKOOK opened his eyes and whispered, Don't hate him. JIMIN looked down at him, tears finally breaking free. I don't have room to hate him. I'm too busy being scared for you. JUNGKOOK's expression cracked. For the first time that night, he looked less like the protector and more like the boy who had been protecting everyone, because he did not know how to ask for help. Jimin leaned close, voice low enough that only JUNGKOOK heard clearly. But when you get through this, I'm going to be furious properly. JUNGKOOK's mouth trembled into something almost like a smile. Fair. The moment lasted 3 seconds. Then Seo-yeon's tablet chimed. She looked down and froze. A third clip is uploading. RM moved beside her. Can we stop it? It's already spreading. Suga's voice was flat. What's in it? Seo-yeon looked from the screen to Jimin, then to JUNGKOOK. It's from inside this hospital. The third clip did not show JUNGKOOK's face. That was the first cruel mercy. It was filmed through a narrow gap, maybe from a partially opened door, maybe from a reflection in glass. The image was unstable, low quality, but the audio was clear enough to ruin them. Jimin's voice from minutes earlier came first, raw and shaking. You asked for Taehyung first. Then JUNGKOOK's voice followed, weak but unmistakable. I had to. The clip cut there, perfectly timed, perfectly poisoned. No explanation about the warning. No context about the trap. No mention of the linked device or the decoy strategy. Just enough to make millions of people believe Jimin had been rejected at JUNGKOOK's bedside. J-Hope watched the tablet over Seo-yeon's shoulder and made a small wounded sound. Jin turned away with both hands on his hips, face hard with rage. RM looked at the hospital corridor like he was calculating how fast a person could move from this room to every restricted entrance. Suga's eyes went dead calm, which meant he had stopped being angry and started being useful. Taehyung looked like the clip had physically struck him. Jimin did not ask to see it again. He had already understood the shape of the attack. They're here, he said. Seo-yeon nodded, or they were within the last few minutes. The doctor stepped in, alarmed by the raised voices and the sudden change in the room. What happened? RM turned to him. Someone recorded inside this room. The doctor's face went white. That's impossible. Suga looked at him. Then prove it. Hospital security flooded the floor within minutes. But the damage had already moved faster than any guard. The clip spread across platforms with captions that turned pain into entertainment. Jimin humiliated? JUNGKOOK chooses Taehyung? Hospital confrontation leaked. Fans were already choosing sides. Some defended JUNGKOOK. Some accused Jimin. Some blamed Taehyung. Some demanded statements from RM. The team's private fracture had become public sport. And through it all, JUNGKOOK had to lie still, while strangers debated the meaning of his weakest words. Jimin stood near his bed, fists tight, eyes fixed on the doorway. The doctor told everyone, except one person, to leave so JUNGKOOK could stabilize. JUNGKOOK looked at Jimin first. Stay. That single word struck harder than any clip. Jimin's breath caught. Seo-yeon looked ready to object, but RM raised a hand. Let him. It was the first time all night RM chose Jimin's place beside JUNGKOOK without hesitation. Jimin noticed. He did not thank him. Not yet. Everyone moved into the hall except Jimin and the doctor, who adjusted a monitor and checked JUNGKOOK with brisk, controlled movements. When she finished, she spoke to Jimin with quiet firmness. No stress, no interrogation. 5 minutes. Jimin nodded without looking away from JUNGKOOK. The doctor left, and the door closed softly. For the first time since 3 a.m., they were alone. Not fully safe, not fully honest, but alone. JUNGKOOK looked exhausted beyond anything Jimin had imagined. You heard the clip? He asked. Jimin nodded. They cut it. Of course. You said stay. JUNGKOOK's gaze moved to him. Because I should have said it weeks ago. Jimin sat slowly beside the bed. The chair made a small sound against the floor, too loud in the quiet room. You're not allowed to disappear behind protection anymore. JUNGKOOK closed his eyes. I know. No, listen to me. Jimin leaned forward, voice steady but wet. You think protecting someone means standing between them and every bad thing until you collapse. But that's not protection. That's leaving them with a body full of guilt and no way to help. You didn't save me from pain. You made me useless while you suffered. JUNGKOOK's eyes opened, shining. I didn't know how else to do it. The confession was so simple it broke Jimin's anger in half. JUNGKOOK had always been strong, in ways that made people forget he was still a person who could be scared. He could perform pain into silence. He could turn fear into discipline. He could make sacrifice look like love, and love look like distance. But lying there now, He looked young and cornered, like every rule he had lived by had finally failed him. Jimin swallowed. Then learn. JUNGKOOK stared at him. Jimin placed his hand near JUNGKOOK's on the sheet, not touching it first, giving him the choice. JUNGKOOK moved one finger closer. It was barely anything. It felt like a decision. Jimin covered his hand gently. We learn differently now. JUNGKOOK's mouth trembled. Even if they turn it ugly? They already did. Even if people say things? They already are. Even if staying near me puts you in danger? Jimin's eyes hardened. I was in danger when you kept me away. At least, now I can see the knife coming. JUNGKOOK almost smiled, then winced slightly. Jimin's face tightened. Sorry. Don't apologize for staying. The words sank between them. Outside, voices rose again. Jimin heard RM, sharp and controlled, demanding access logs. He heard Suga telling someone to isolate network data. He heard Jin threatening to call legal directly if the hospital stalled again. He heard J-Hope trying to keep Taeyoung breathing through panic. For the first time, the team was not hiding from the truth. They were moving through it, ugly and late, but together. The door opened after 5 minutes exactly. Seo-yeon entered with RM and Suga. Her expression told Jimin there was no good news. We have the access list. RM held a printed sheet. 3 hospital staff entered the corridor in the relevant window. 2 security guards, 1 company employee. Jimin looked from the page to RM. Who? RM's jaw tightened. He handed the paper to Suga, who read the names, then stopped at the last one. No! Jin and J-Hope came in behind them. Taeyoung hovered at the doorway. Jimin stood. Say it! Suga looked at Seo-yeon. Seo-yeon's face had gone completely controlled again. The company employee logged on this floor 12 minutes before the 3rd clip uploaded was Min Hae-ren. Jimin's eyes narrowed. The name was familiar. Too familiar. Hae-ren was JUNGKOOK's former personal coordinator, reassigned after Osaka because JUNGKOOK had demanded a change without explaining why. She had managed his schedules, his private transport, his room keys, his device backups. She knew every routine, every weak point, every emotional pattern. JUNGKOOK's face changed on the bed, and Jimin saw recognition turn into dread. Kook, Jimin said softly. JUNGKOOK whispered, I told him to move her quietly. RM turned to him. Why? JUNGKOOK looked at the ceiling like he could not bear to face the answer. Because she said Jimin was ruining me. The room froze. Taeyoung stepped fully inside, stunned. Jin's face hardened. J-Hope whispered. What? JUNGKOOK swallowed. After Osaka, she kept telling me the same thing, that I was throwing away my health, my image, my future, because I couldn't stop choosing him. I thought she was just angry. I thought if she was reassigned, it would end. Suga's voice was dangerously low. And you didn't tell us? JUNGKOOK closed his eyes. She said if I reported her, she would prove Jimin was the reason I was unstable. Jimin felt every word land, not as accusation this time, but as motive. There it was. The hunter had a name, not confirmed, not proven, but suddenly visible. A person with access. A person with obsession disguised as concern. A person who saw Jimin not as someone JUNGKOOK loved, but as an infection to remove. Seo-yeon's phone rang. She answered, listened for 3 seconds, then went pale despite herself. Lock the exits, she said. Now. RM stepped closer. What happened? Seo-yeon looked at JUNGKOOK, then at Jimin. Hae-ren is not in the building anymore. Suga's eyes sharpened. Where is she? Seo-yeon lowered the phone slowly. She was seen leaving through the service elevator with a hospital transfer folder under JUNGKOOK's legal name. Jimin's hand went cold. Jin whispered, What was in the folder? Seo-yeon did not answer fast enough. JUNGKOOK tried to sit up, panic cutting through his weakness. Jimin pushed him gently back. Don't move. JUNGKOOK grabbed his sleeve. Jimin, that folder has the full diagnosis. Everyone understood at once. The clips had been bait. The messages had been control. The 3rd leak had been proof she could reach them anywhere. But the diagnosis was different. If released, it would not just embarrass JUNGKOOK. It could change his career, his future, his freedom to decide his own life. Jimin looked toward the door, and for the first time that night, he did not look wounded. He looked ready. RM saw it and stepped beside him. Suga moved to his other side. Jin blocked the hallway. J-Hope held Taehyung steady. Jungkook stared at Jimin with fear and trust fighting across his face. "Don't chase her alone," Jungkook whispered. Jimin looked back once. "Then stop making me be alone." And when Jimin stepped into the corridor, the unknown device sent one final message to Jungkook's phone. "Come find me before the world finds out why he really collapsed." Jimin did not run blindly into the corridor, even though every part of him wanted to. That was the first sign something inside him had changed. Earlier, he would have charged forward on pain alone, chasing the person who had touched Jungkook's private life like a thief and turned his suffering into entertainment. But now, with Jungkook's last message burning behind him and the unknown device daring them to move, Jimin stopped at the corner, looked once at RM, and said, "Rules." RM's eyes sharpened, surprised and relieved at the same time. "No one alone." Suga held up Jungkook's phone. "No direct contact. We trace before we answer." Jin stepped into the hallway behind them, face cold, no softness left. And no one from the hospital staff goes near Jungkook unless the doctor confirms them first. J-Hope was still with Taehyung near the door, but his fear had turned focused. He nodded fast. "I'll stay by the room. TAE, with me." Taehyung looked like he wanted to follow Jimin, like guilt was dragging him forward by the throat, but J-Hope caught his arm. "Not this time. You're shaking." Taehyung looked at Jimin. For a second, the two of them just stared. So much had broken between them in one night that neither knew where to put the words. Finally, Taehyung whispered, "Bring the folder back." Jimin's jaw tightened. "I'm bringing more than that." The service hallway stretched ahead, narrow and too quiet. Hospital security had started sealing exits, but the building was large, and Hae-rin knew systems. She had worked around schedules for years. She knew when people changed shifts, which doors were watched properly, which cameras lagged, which staff would obey a confident person carrying official papers. That realization made Jimin colder. This was not a panicked leak. This was a planned extraction. Suga walked while typing fast with one hand, using his own secured phone now. Jungkook's compromised phone wrapped in a hospital towel to limit accidental contact. She left service elevator B 7 minutes ago. If she went down to the parking level, she's already gone. RM said, "Unless she wanted us to think that." Jimin glanced at him. "You think she stayed?" RM nodded. "The message said, 'Come find me.' That's not escape language, that's staging." Jin's voice came from behind them. "She wants Jimin outside Jungkook's room." Jimin stopped again. The words hit too close. Suga looked up slowly. RM's face changed. For several seconds, no one spoke. The obvious path was suddenly the trap. Hae-rin had threatened Jungkook's diagnosis, sent a challenge, used Jimin's fear against him. If Jimin chased, Jungkook was left with fewer trusted people in the room. If they all chased, Jungkook was vulnerable. If they did nothing, the folder could be released. That was the cruelty of her game. Every option looked like failure. Jimin turned back toward Jungkook's door. Through the small window, he could see only a slice of the room, the monitor glow, the edge of the bed, J-Hope standing guard like he would physically hold the world back if he had to. Taehyung sat beside the wall with both hands over his mouth, eyes locked on Jungkook. Jimin exhaled slowly. "She thinks I'll choose the folder over him." RM looked at him. "Will you?" Jimin's answer came immediately. "No." Jin's shoulders dropped a fraction, like he had been holding his breath. Jimin looked at Suga. "Can you make her think I did?" Suga's eyes narrowed. Then, almost imperceptibly, he nodded. "Yes." RM stepped closer. "Explain." Suga looked down at Jungkook's phone. "We send one controlled response from this device. Short, emotional, believable. Something Jimin would say if he lost control." Jimin understood instantly. "And track the reaction?" "Exactly. If she's nearby, she adjusts. If she's remote, she forwards the next leak. Either way, she reveals timing." Jin asked, "What do we send?" Suga looked at Jimin. "Your pain, but shaped." Jimin took the phone carefully, not touching more than he had to. The screen still showed the message. Come find me before the world finds out why he really collapsed. For a moment his hands shook, not because he was afraid of Hae-rin, because part of him could still feel the old reflex rising, the desperate need to chase every threat aimed at JUNGKOOK, to prove he loved him by moving fast enough. That was JUNGKOOK's rule. That was the rule that had nearly destroyed him. JIMIN refused to inherit it. He typed slowly. If you wanted me away from him, you failed. Then he paused. Suga watched over his shoulder. Too strong, Suga said quietly. She wants you angry, not controlled. JIMIN deleted it. He typed again. Tell me where you are. I'll come alone. Suga nodded. Better. RM looked grim. That sounds reckless. JIMIN did not look up. That's why she'll believe it. He sent the message. The silence that followed felt too long, even though it was less than 10 seconds. Then, the typing indicator appeared. Jin muttered, There. Suga lifted his secured phone. Ready. The reply came. Third basement. Old records room. 10 minutes. No leader, no producer, no Hyung. Only you. RM gave a humorless smile. She really knows us. Suga's eyes stayed on the screen. Or she thinks she does. JIMIN looked toward JUNGKOOK's room again. I'm not going. RM nodded once. Good. Then JIMIN said, But she needs to see me enter the elevator. Jin's head snapped toward him. No. Controlled contradiction, JIMIN said, using Suga's words. Let her think I'm back on script. Suga considered it. We can stage movement. I go through stairwell. Namjoon coordinates security. Jin stays visible near this floor. JIMIN enters the elevator, but exits on second basement, not third. Hospital security closes from below. RM shook his head. Too many variables. JIMIN's voice hardened. Then give me a better option before 10 minutes becomes 9. The leader looked at him, and something passed between them that was not forgiveness, not yet, but cooperation under pressure. RM turned to Seo-yeon, who had just reached them with 2 legal staff and a hospital security supervisor. We need floor plans, camera access, and a controlled movement route now. Seo-yeon looked at JIMIN. You're bait. JIMIN's mouth tightened. No, I'm the contradiction. Seo-yeon studied him, and for the first time she seemed to understand that JIMIN was not simply emotional, not simply wounded, not simply the person everyone had tried to protect from impact. He had been underestimated by both sides. That made him dangerous. Fine, she said, but if you break route, I shut this down. JIMIN nodded. If you hide anything, I shut you out. For once, Seo-yeon did not argue. The next 6 minutes moved with brutal precision. RM spoke with hospital security in clipped instructions. Suga mapped the device response timing, cross-checking the message relay with the building's internal network. Jin returned to JUNGKOOK's door and told J-Hope exactly what was happening, leaving nothing out. Tae-young heard every word and looked like each one cut him, but he did not interrupt. JIMIN stood in the hallway, waiting for the elevator, feeling the hospital camera above him like an eye. He knew Hae-rin might be watching the feed somehow. He knew the world online was still tearing apart the third clip, turning his private hurt into public theories. He knew JUNGKOOK was lying just meters away, awake enough to be terrified, and too weak to stop anyone. The elevator arrived with a soft chime. JIMIN stepped in alone. The doors began to close. At the last second, he saw JUNGKOOK's room door open. JUNGKOOK had forced himself up just enough to see him. Their eyes met down the corridor, and JIMIN knew JUNGKOOK understood the plan, and hated it. JIMIN did not smile. He only lifted his hand slightly, palm open, a quiet promise. Not alone, not anymore. The doors closed between them. The elevator started down, and then every light inside flickered once before the panel changed by itself, skipping the second basement and locking onto B3.
For half a second, JIMIN did not move. He stared at the glowing B3 button while the elevator descended with a smoothness that felt obscene. The plan had lasted less than 1 minute before Hae-rin touched it. His first instinct was to press every button, then the emergency alarm, then force the doors open if he had to. But the rules came back, not as RM's order, not as Seo-yeon's condition, but as JUNGKOOK's body under hospital sheets. No one alone. No panic on script. Change the pattern. Jimin slid his phone from his pocket, saw the signal drop to 1 bar, and typed one word into the secure group Suga had created. Hijacked. The message failed to send, of course. He looked up at the camera in the corner. The small black dome reflected a warped version of himself, pale face, dark hoodie, eyes too focused for the fear crawling up his spine. He stepped closer to it and said calmly, "You're not as smart as you think." The elevator stopped. The doors opened onto B3. The third basement was colder than the upper floors, and the air had a stale weight to it, like the building stored everything it wanted forgotten down there. Old records, broken equipment, maintenance carts, a vending machine humming by itself. One corridor lit, another half dark. Jimin did not step out immediately. He scanned left, then right. No Hirin, no security, no RM, no Suga, no anyone. The doors started closing again. Jimin had 1 second to choose. Stay in a hijacked elevator and be moved wherever she wanted, or step into the place she had named and control at least his own feet. He stepped out. The doors shut behind him. Upstairs, chaos exploded the moment Suga's tracker showed the elevator route changed. RM slammed one hand against the security desk. "Override it," the supervisor stammered. "We're trying." Suga's face had gone terrifyingly still. She accessed the elevator system through a maintenance login. Seoyeon turned sharply. "Can you lock her out? Not without locking Jimin in too." JUNGKOOK heard the raised voices from his room and tried to sit up again. Jin moved fast, blocking him gently but firmly. "No." JUNGKOOK's eyes were wild. "Where is he?" J-Hope stood by the door, face pale. Taehyung had already risen to his feet. No one answered quickly enough. JUNGKOOK looked at Jin, then at Taehyung, then at J-Hope, and understood. "She took him." "We don't know that," Jin said. JUNGKOOK's voice broke. "Don't protect me with maybes." That sentence silenced them. Taehyung stepped forward, shaking. "The elevator skipped the route. He's on B3. JUNGKOOK closed his eyes and the monitor shifted again. Jin turned sharply toward the hall. "Doctor!" JUNGKOOK grabbed Jin's sleeve before he could leave. "Bring him back." Jin's face cracked. "We will." "No," JUNGKOOK whispered, breathing hard. "You don't understand." She doesn't just want to expose things. She wants him to hear something from her first. Taehyung froze. "Hear what?" JUNGKOOK looked at him, devastated. "The part I didn't tell any of you." Down on B3, Jimin moved through the corridor with his back close to the wall, listening. There were distant mechanical sounds, pipes, ventilation, the low pulse of a generator behind a locked door. He found signs for storage, archives, restricted records, maintenance office. The old records room was at the far end of the corridor, exactly where Hirin said it would be. The door was partly open. A thin line of yellow light fell across the floor. Jimin stopped outside. "I'm here." No answer. He pushed the door with 2 fingers. It creaked inward. The room was packed with shelves, boxes, outdated files, sealed containers, and a single desk lamp placed on a metal table. On the table sat a brown hospital transfer folder. JUNGKOOK's legal name was printed on the label. Beside it was a phone playing a paused video. Jimin did not enter fully. "Come out." A voice came from the shadows behind the shelves. Calm, female, familiar. "You really do learn fast when he's the prize." Jimin's jaw tightened. "Hirin." She stepped into the light slowly. She looked almost the same as he remembered. Neat coat, staff badge still clipped at her pocket, hair cleanly pinned, face composed. But the softness she used to wear around JUNGKOOK was gone. In its place was something stripped and bitter. She looked at Jimin like he was not a person but a long-standing error. "You came alone." Jimin said nothing. She smiled faintly. "No, you didn't. You came as part of a plan. That is new." Jimin's stomach tightened. "If you know that, why bring me here? Because even plans have emotional weak points." Her eyes dropped to the folder. "And yours is lying upstairs pretending he doesn't want to follow you." Jimin moved 1 step into the room. "Give me the folder." Hirin laughed quietly. "Direct, that must be why he likes you. You don't make him guess what you want. You just take up space until he rearranges himself around you." Jimin's eyes hardened. "You don't get to talk about him like that. I talked to him every day when you were too busy being hurt by the distance you created." The sentence hit, but Jimin did not let it show. Hirin noticed anyway. "There, that face, you know it's true." Jimin's voice stayed low. "I know I made mistakes. That doesn't make you righteous." Her expression sharpened. "Righteous? You think this is about righteousness?" She picked up the folder but did not open it. "I watched him choose you until his hands shook. I watched him rehearse through pain because he thought your guilt would be worse than his collapse. I watched him delete messages, ignore warnings, refuse rest, lie to doctors, lie to members, lie to himself. Every time the company asked who could calm him, whose name did they say? Yours. Every time he broke, whose door did he walk toward? Yours. And every time he needed to save someone who stood conveniently in the center of danger. Jimin stepped closer. Careful. Hirin smiled without warmth. Why, afraid I'll say the thing no one else will? He looked at the folder, then at the paused video on the phone. You planted the warning before Osaka. Her smile faded, but she did not deny it. I sent a warning that prevented an accident from becoming worse. You created the accident. No, the word came sharp, too sharp. I created a test. Jimin's face went still. A test, to prove what everyone refused to see. Hirin's voice rose for the first time. That JUNGKOOK would destroy himself for you without thinking, that you had become the switch anyone could press. Jimin felt cold anger spread through him. You risked his life to prove he cared about me. I showed him what his loyalty was doing. You hurt him. You were hurting him first. Jimin moved before she expected, crossing half the room and slamming his hand down on the metal table hard enough to make the lamp rattle. Hirin flinched. Do not dress obsession up as concern, he said. You don't get to injure someone, scare everyone, steal medical records, leak private moments, and call it saving him. Hirin's face twisted. He would have listened eventually. To you, Jimin asked. He asked for you to be reassigned because you scared him. That landed. Her composure cracked in a flash of humiliation. He was confused. No, he saw you. Hirin's hand tightened around the folder. He saw what you made him see. Then the phone on the table started playing by itself. Jimin turned toward it. The video showed JUNGKOOK in a small backstage room weeks earlier, seated with his elbows on his knees. Hirin's voice came from off-camera. Say it clearly, JUNGKOOK. Say Jimin is the reason you can't rest. JUNGKOOK looked exhausted, angry, cornered. No. Hirin's voice sharpened. Say it or I send him the hospital note. JUNGKOOK stared at the floor for a long moment. Then he whispered, if Jimin finds out, it will ruin him. Hirin paused the video. Jimin slowly looked back at her. She smiled through tears now, as if the video proved something holy. He protected you even from the truth of what you did to him. Jimin's face looked carved from stone. Play the rest. Hirin blinked. What? You heard me. He pointed at the phone. Play the rest. For the first time, uncertainty moved across her face. There is no need. Jimin stepped closer. Because the rest ruins your story. Her silence answered. Jimin reached for the phone, but she snatched it away. That was when the door behind him slammed shut. The lock clicked. Hirin's expression changed from shaken to resolved. You should have stayed upstairs, she whispered. Jimin turned toward the locked door. From the small speaker hidden somewhere in the room, a distorted notification sound played. Then Hirin's phone lit up with a scheduled upload countdown. 3 minutes. The file name was simple. JUNGKOOK Confession Full. The countdown on Hirin's phone changed the room faster than any confession could. 2 minutes 59 seconds. 2 minutes 58. Jimin looked at the screen, then at the folder, then at Hirin's face, and understood the real trap. She had not brought him down to negotiate. She had brought him down to make him choose in a locked room with time running out, take the folder, stop the upload, or chase the truth from her mouth. She wanted him desperate. She wanted him emotional. She wanted the version of Jimin she had built in her head, the one who would break loudly enough to justify everything she had done. But Jimin had seen JUNGKOOK weak under hospital lights. He had seen what protection without trust became. He was not going to give Hirin the performance she wanted. That file isn't full, he said. Hirin's smile twitched. You haven't seen it. I saw enough. You cut people mid-sentence. That's your habit. The full file will show him admitting everything. No, Jimin said, stepping toward the table. It will show you forcing words out of a sick man after you threatened to use his privacy against him. Hirin's eyes flashed. Sick because of you. Jimin picked up the desk lamp and turned it toward the corners of the room, scanning fast. You keep saying that like repetition becomes proof. She moved closer to the phone. Don't touch anything. Then unlock the door. Not until you listen. The light caught something small near a shelf, a compact camera taped behind a stack of archive boxes. Jimin stared at it. Hirin followed his gaze and went still. He almost laughed. You're recording this too. For protection. No, for editing. He looked directly into the hidden camera. Then make sure you get this clearly. Han Hirin lured me to B3 using JUNGKOOK's compromised phone, locked me in an old records room, and is threatening to release edited medical and private footage. Hirin lunged toward the camera, panic flashing. Jimin used that second to grab the folder. She turned back, furious. Put that down. He opened it. Inside were medical forms, transfer notes, diagnostic summaries, and printed copies of emergency authorization details. He did not read the diagnosis fully. He refused to violate JUNGKOOK the way she had. Instead, he looked for one thing, whether anything had already been scanned, copied, marked. There, clipped to the back, was a flash drive in a plastic evidence sleeve. JIMIN held it up. "This yours?" Heerin froze. "You don't understand what's on that. Then you shouldn't have stolen it." The countdown hit 2 minutes 10. Heerin grabbed for the drive. JIMIN stepped back and knocked a chair between them. She stumbled, caught herself, and her professional mask finally disappeared completely. "He was supposed to choose himself," she shouted. The words echoed through the records room, raw and ugly. Just once he was supposed to say he was tired of carrying you. I gave him every chance. I showed him the risk. I made him see what his body was doing. I told him if he kept running to you, there would be nothing left. But every single time, he said your name like it was an answer." Jimin's face tightened, not with victory, but pain. Because beneath her obsession, beneath the crimes and the leaks and the cruelty, there was a twisted version of a truth none of them had faced cleanly. JUNGKOOK had been choosing him too hard. The difference was Heerin had turned that truth into punishment. JIMIN turned the flash drive in his hand. "You never wanted him healthy, you wanted him obedient." Heerin shook her head, tears in her eyes now. "I wanted him free. From me? From needing you." Jimin's voice dropped. "You don't free someone by taking away their choice." Upstairs, JUNGKOOK was demanding to leave the bed, and the room had become its own battlefield. The doctor stood firm, blocking him medically. Jin stood beside her, blocking him emotionally. "You move, you make it worse," Jin said. JUNGKOOK's eyes burned. "He's locked in with her." Suga looked up from his device. "How do you know that?" JUNGKOOK's voice went cold. "Because she always closes the door before she says the cruel part." Taehyung looked like he had been struck by another hidden memory. "She did that with you." JUNGKOOK looked away. "More than once." RM stepped closer to Suga. "Can you get audio?" Suga's fingers moved fast. "If the hidden camera is linked to the same network, maybe. She's arrogant enough to record live." Seo-yeon stood behind them, listening to her legal team through one earpiece, face grim. "Security is outside B3 corridor, but the records room lock was manually overridden from inside." "They need a master release." RM said, "Break it." The hospital supervisor protested, "There are safety procedures." Jin turned so fast the man stepped back. "Break it." Suga's laptop gave a soft tone. "I have something." Everyone gathered around. The audio came through distorted but clear enough. Heerin's voice, "I wanted him free." Then Jimin's, "You don't free someone by taking away their choice." JUNGKOOK closed his eyes, and something like relief and agony moved across his face. "He's calm." Taehyung whispered, "Jimin's calm." RM looked at JUNGKOOK. "He listened to you." JUNGKOOK shook his head faintly. "No, he became himself." Downstairs, the countdown reached 1 minute 30. Jimin did not know Suga had audio. He did not know security was close. He knew only the locked door, the stolen folder, the phone counting down, and Heerin standing between him and the truth she had edited into weapons. He held the flash drive tight. "Stop the upload." Heerin wiped her face, regaining control by force. "Give me the drive." "Stop the upload first." "You think you're negotiating. I think you're running out of story." Her eyes narrowed. "You don't know the worst part." Jimin did not move. "Then say it." Heerin smiled again, but it trembled. "JUNGKOOK did collapse tonight because of you." The words hit the exact place she wanted, and for the first time Jimin's face flickered. She saw it and pressed. "Not because of schedules, not because of me. Not because of Osaka, because he saw the draft statement." Jimin's throat tightened. "What draft statement?" Heerin's smile widened. "The one management prepared if his condition became public. The one saying he would take a long hiatus for health and you would continue activities separately to reduce speculation. He thought you had agreed." Jimin went still. "I never saw that. He didn't know that." The countdown hit 58 seconds. "I sent it to him from a company account." "He thought you chose the clean separation. He thought after everything, when he was finally too weak to protect you, you had chosen your career over him." Jimin's mouth parted, and now the floor really did feel unstable. JUNGKOOK had not collapsed only from hidden illness. He had collapsed from a lie designed to break the one thing he still trusted. Upstairs, the audio cut through the laptop and JUNGKOOK heard it. His face went blank. RM turned slowly to Seo-yeon. "What draft statement?" Seo-yeon looked horrified. "There was a contingency draft. It was internal. It was never approved, never sent." Suga's voice dropped. "But she had access." JUNGKOOK whispered, "I thought Jimin knew." Jin closed his eyes. J-Hope said, "Oh my God." Taehyung sank back into the chair, crying silently. In the records room, Jimin's eyes had changed. Not broken, not defeated, clear. Hee-rin expected guilt. Instead, she got certainty. "Thank you," he said. She blinked. "What?" "That's what I needed." He lifted the hidden camera from the shelf, ripped it free, and turned its lens toward her phone. The countdown showed 30 seconds. "You wanted confession, there it is." Hee-rin realized too late. If the camera was live, if anyone had accessed it, if her words had gone upstairs, then the story had reversed. She lunged for the phone. Jimin grabbed it first, but she caught his wrist, twisting hard enough to make pain shoot up his arm. He did not let go. The phone slipped, hit the floor, and skidded under the table. 21 seconds. Hee-rin dropped to reach it. Jimin kicked the chair aside and pulled the table back, but the phone was just out of reach. 16 seconds. The door behind them shook as someone hit it from outside. 10 seconds. Hee-rin screamed, "You don't deserve him." Jimin reached under the table, fingers brushing the phone. 7, 6, 5, he grabbed it. 4, the screen asked for a passcode. 3, Hee-rin smiled through tears. 2. Jimin looked at her, then at the emergency call option, then at the live upload app running in the background. 1, the door burst open. The door slammed inward so violently that the old records room seemed to jump. Security entered first, then RM, then Suga, with Jin right behind them despite Seo-yeon shouting that he should stay upstairs. Jimin was on one knee beside the metal table. Hee-rin crouched opposite him. And her phone lay between them with the upload screen frozen at 1 second. For one brutal heartbeat, nobody knew whether they had stopped it. Then Suga moved faster than everyone, snatching the phone with a cloth from a security guard's kit, forcing it into airplane mode, and connecting it to his secured device with the kind of focus that made the room silent around him. Hee-rin stood slowly, hair loosened, face wet, eyes still fixed on Jimin. "You ruined him," she whispered. Jin stepped forward, rage flashing. "Say one more word to him." RM caught Jin's arm. "Hyung." Jin did not move his eyes from Hee-rin. "No, she doesn't get to speak like she's the victim." Hee-rin laughed weakly. "Of course, protect Jimin. Everyone protects Jimin." Jimin stood, folder under one arm, flash drive in his hand. He looked tired now, more than angry. "No, that's what you never understood. They protected secrets from me. JUNGKOOK protected pain from me. You protected your obsession from consequences. Nobody protected me from the thing that actually hurt." Hee-rin's eyes narrowed. "And what was that?" Jimin looked at RM, then Jin, then Suga, and his voice dropped. "Being treated like love made me dangerous." That sentence hit the room harder than Hee-rin expected. RM looked down. Jin's anger dimmed into grief. Suga stopped typing for half a second, then resumed. Hee-rin had no answer for that, because the truth had left her without a clean villain. She had built her entire justification on the idea that Jimin was the wound. But Jimin was standing there with stolen records in his hand, refusing to read JUNGKOOK's diagnosis, refusing to chase her edits, refusing to become the careless person she needed him to be. Suga finally exhaled. "Upload blocked. Partial packet attempted, but no file transfer completed." RM released a breath. Jin closed his eyes. Jimin did not relax. "What about copies?" Suga looked at Hee-rin. "That depends on how many exits she built." Hee-rin smiled faintly. "You think I came here with one phone?" Security moved toward her, but she did not resist. That was its own threat. She allowed them to take her bag, her badge, her coat, every visible device. She stood calmly while Seo-yeon arrived with legal staff and hospital security, her face set with professional fury. "Min Hee-rin," Seo-yeon said, voice clipped, "you are being detained pending investigation for unauthorized access, theft of confidential medical records, and illegal distribution of private material." Hee-rin looked almost bored. "Careful with your wording, you do not know what was authorized." Seo-yeon's jaw tightened. "I know enough." "Do you?" Hee-rin looked at RM then, and the room cooled. "Ask your company who gave me access after reassignment." RM's face changed. "What?" Hee-rin tilted her head. "You really think I kept every login alive myself?" Suga looked up sharply. "She had help." Hee-rin smiled. "Not help, permission." Seo-yeon went still. Jin turned to her. "Is that possible?" "No," Seo-yeon said, but the word came too fast. Suga heard it. RM heard it. Jimin heard it. Hee-rin saw all of them hear it and smiled wider. "There it is, the company face, so clean, so sure, so late." RM stepped close to her, and the leader in him was gone, replaced by a man who had held too many disasters together with bare hands. "Who?" Hee-rin looked past him to Jimin. "He knows." Jimin's brow tightened. I don't. Not yet. She leaned slightly closer before security pulled her back. But JUNGKOOK does. That shifted everything again. The folder in Jimin's hand suddenly felt heavier. The flash drive felt like a fuse. Upstairs, JUNGKOOK had the missing piece, the part he had not told anyone, the part Hee-rin had been trying to reach before Jimin could hear it from him. RM ordered security to remove her, but as they guided her toward the corridor, she turned one last time. Tell him I kept my promise longer than he kept his. Jimin felt the sentence move through him like a hook. What promise? Hee-rin only smiled. Then she was taken out. The room remained full of people, but for several seconds nobody spoke. The twist had not ended with her capture. It had widened. Hee-rin was not just an obsessed former coordinator acting alone. Someone had allowed access. Someone had kept doors open. Someone inside the system had benefited from the members doubting each other, from Jimin feeling excluded, from JUNGKOOK collapsing under pressure. Suga stared at the seized phone. We need to clone everything before legal buries it in process. Seo-yeon's eyes flashed. Careful. Suga looked at her. No. You be careful. The next person who tells us to wait while JUNGKOOK pays the price becomes part of the problem. RM turned to Seo-yeon and his voice was quiet but final. From now on, everything comes to us directly. No filtering, no holding for approval, no internal management before the members know. Seo-yeon looked like she wanted to fight it, but the night had already moved beyond her control. Fine. Jin took the folder from Jimin gently. Did you read it? Jimin shook his head. No. Jin's eyes softened with respect. Good. Jimin looked down the corridor toward the elevator. I need to see him. RM nodded. We all do. The way back upstairs felt longer than the descent. Jimin walked between RM and Jin with Suga behind them carrying the seized devices in evidence bags. He should have felt relief. The folder was recovered. The upload was blocked. Hee-rin had been identified and detained. The closer they got to JUNGKOOK's floor, the more Jimin felt the unresolved truth waiting. Tell him I kept my promise longer than he kept his. But JUNGKOOK does. Those words did not belong to random revenge. They belonged to history. When the elevator doors opened on the private floor, Taehyung was standing in the hallway. His face was pale and J-Hope was beside him, one hand on his shoulder. He heard everything, J-Hope said quietly. Jimin stopped. Through Suga's audio, J-Hope nodded. Most of it, Taehyung swallowed. He's asking for everyone. That was different. Not Taehyung, not Jimin, everyone. RM looked at Jin. Jin nodded once. Suga's grip tightened around the evidence bags. They entered the room together. JUNGKOOK was lying back again, exhausted, but his eyes were open and painfully clear. The doctor stood near the monitor, unhappy, but aware this conversation could not be postponed without causing more harm. JUNGKOOK's gaze found Jimin first, scanning his face like he needed proof he had come back whole. Jimin stepped closer. I'm here. JUNGKOOK's eyes flicked to the folder in Jin's hand. You didn't read it. No, something in JUNGKOOK's face broke with relief. Thank you. RM came to the foot of the bed. Hee-rin said someone kept her access open. JUNGKOOK closed his eyes. Yes. Suga stepped forward. Who? JUNGKOOK opened his eyes, but he looked at Seo-yeon, not the members. You should leave. Seo-yeon stiffened. JUNGKOOK, I need to be present for legal. No, JUNGKOOK said, weak but absolute. You need to leave because the person who helped her is above you. Seo-yeon's face drained. RM went very still. Jin whispered, above crisis team. JUNGKOOK nodded once. Jimin felt the air change. Taehyung's hand tightened around J-Hope's sleeve. Suga's eyes turned dark. Executive level, he said. JUNGKOOK swallowed. After Osaka, I wanted to file a private complaint. Not public, not messy. Just enough to make sure Hee-rin never came near our rooms or devices again. I wrote it. I had proof of her messages. I sent it to one person. RM's voice was careful. Who? JUNGKOOK looked at him with apology already in his eyes. Director Kang. Jin inhaled sharply. J-Hope whispered, no way. Taehyung looked horrified. Seo-yeon's mouth opened, then closed. Director Kang was not just an executive. He was one of the men who controlled tour logistics, public response, staffing approvals, and internal discipline. He had been in every crisis meeting. He had praised JUNGKOOK publicly. He had told the members privately to trust the system. RM's face looked carved from stone. And what happened? JUNGKOOK's eyes grew wet. He told me he would handle it quietly. Then Hee-rin came to me the next day and repeated a sentence from the complaint that only he had read. Jimin's stomach dropped. Jin cursed under his breath. Suga's voice was low. Why didn't you tell Namjoon? JUNGKOOK looked at RM, shame and fear twisting together. Because Director Kang said if I made it a group issue, he would open a formal review into Jimin's stability after Osaka and recommend separation for both of us during promotions. Jimin froze. RM looked like he had been hit. JUNGKOOK's voice shook. He said I could protect Jimin's career or I could protect myself. I chose wrong. Jimin moved to the bedside immediately. No, JUNGKOOK looked at him. I chose silence. You were threatened. I still chose it. Jimin gripped the bed rail, fighting the urge to touch him too hard, too desperately. Then choose differently now. JUNGKOOK stared at him. The room held its breath. Slowly, JUNGKOOK nodded. Okay, RM straightened. Then we go after Kang. Seo-yeon looked alarmed. You cannot move against an executive without airtight proof. Suga lifted the evidence bags. We're getting there. Jin looked at JUNGKOOK. What promise did Hee-rin mean? JUNGKOOK's face changed. That was the question he feared most. Jimin saw it and felt his pulse rise. JUNGKOOK looked at him, and suddenly the room felt smaller than the hospital, smaller than the scandal, smaller than the company. Before she was reassigned, JUNGKOOK said quietly, she made me promise I would let Jimin go if my condition got worse. Jimin stopped breathing. Taehyung covered his mouth. RM shut his eyes. JUNGKOOK continued, voice barely holding. And I promised because I thought it would keep him safe until I found proof. Jimin's face twisted with pain. Is that why you pushed me away? JUNGKOOK's tears finally slipped free. Yes. The truth should have relieved him. It did not. It landed like a second collapse. Hee-rin had not only stolen records. Kang had not only buried warnings. They had turned JUNGKOOK's love into a contract against himself. Jimin leaned over the bed, voice shaking, anger and grief finally joining into one clear decision. Then hear me clearly. I'm not something you can let go of to pay a debt to the people who hurt you. JUNGKOOK broke. He covered his face with one weak hand, and Jimin gently pulled it down, refusing to let him hide again. RM turned away, eyes wet. Jin looked at the ceiling. Suga stared at the floor like he was memorizing every reason to destroy Kang legally. J-Hope cried without sound. Taehyung whispered, I'm sorry, but this time he was not sure who he was saying it to. Then JUNGKOOK's phone, still wrapped and isolated, lit up inside Suga's evidence bag. It should not have received anything. It should not have been connected. But the screen glowed anyway with a new message, not from Hee-rin's device, not from an unknown tablet, but from an internal company emergency account. It said, stand down, or the next leak will not be about JUNGKOOK. It will be about Jimin. The message from the internal company emergency account sat inside the evidence bag like it had no right to exist, glowing through the plastic with a threat so precise it cut through every argument in the room. Stand down, or the next leak will not be about JUNGKOOK. It will be about Jimin. Nobody breathed normally after that. RM took one step towards Suga, but Suga already had the bag lifted, eyes narrowed, every part of him locked onto the screen. That account is supposed to be restricted, he said. Seo-yeon looked like she had been stripped of every official answer she normally carried. It is. Jin's voice turned sharp. Clearly not. JUNGKOOK's eyes went straight to Jimin. Even weak, even exhausted, even lying under hospital lights with his body fighting him, the first visible thing on his face was not fear for himself. It was fear for Jimin. That alone almost broke Jimin again. He stepped closer before JUNGKOOK could speak. Don't. JUNGKOOK's lips parted. Jimin, no, don't do that thing where you look at me like you already decided to sacrifice yourself again. The room went still. JUNGKOOK swallowed, wounded because Jimin had seen the thought before he could hide it. Jimin leaned over the bed rail, voice low but shaking with control. They threaten me and your first instinct is to step back into their cage. That is exactly what they want. That is how they trained you. JUNGKOOK's eyes filled, but he did not look away. I can't let them hurt you. You already tried that way, look where we are. The sentence hit harshly, but it was not cruel. It was true, and JUNGKOOK knew it. RM turned toward Seo-yeon. Can Director Kang access that emergency account? Seo-yeon answered too slowly. At his level, yes, but messages from that account are logged. Suga's mouth tightened. Unless someone with admin privileges clears the trail. Can he do that? Jin demanded. Seo-yeon's silence was answer enough. J-Hope let out a strained breath, almost a laugh but empty. So the company account is threatening us inside the hospital while JUNGKOOK is still in bed, and we are supposed to trust process. Taehyung stepped forward, eyes red but focused now. No more process before truth. Everyone looked at him. He stood straighter, as if shame had finally become weight he could carry instead of sink beneath. I deleted evidence. I listened when people told me silence would protect us. I'm not doing that again. Jimin looked at him. The hurt was still there, deep and raw, but something else moved beside it. Not forgiveness, not yet, but recognition. Taehyung was standing in the open now, no longer hiding behind panic. RM picked up the printed access list and folded it once hard. Then we claim the narrative before they release the next piece. Seoyeon snapped her head toward him. You cannot make a public statement from a hospital room in the middle of an active internal investigation. RM's face was cold. Watch me. Seoyeon stepped closer. You expose this too early, Kang buries everything. He will frame it as emotional instability, panic, member conflict, leaked private stress. He has enough influence to make people doubt all of you. Suga looked at her. Then we don't expose everything. Jin understood first. We claim what they're using. Jimin turned to him. Jin's eyes were hard but clear. They keep cutting private moments because we keep acting like the private truth is shameful. We don't give them the diagnosis. We don't give them JUNGKOOK's medical details, but we say enough to make the edits useless. J-Hope nodded slowly. We say he is receiving care, the leaks are unauthorized, and any distorted clips are being used to harm him. Taehyung added, voice trembling but firm, and we say the members are together. JUNGKOOK closed his eyes. If you say that, they'll target Jimin. Jimin answered immediately. They already did. JUNGKOOK opened his eyes. Jimin's voice softened, but it did not weaken. Kook, listen to me. I spent this whole night thinking I had been pushed out of your life because I was the damage. Then I found out people made you believe loving me was proof you were broken. I am not letting them write that sentence for us anymore. JUNGKOOK's breathing hitched. What are you saying? Jimin stood fully, no longer leaning over him, no longer speaking like someone asking permission. I'm saying if they want to make my name the threat, I will make it the line they cannot cross. RM watched him closely. Jimin turned. No more statements that erase what happened. No more safe language that makes JUNGKOOK look alone. No more protecting the company before protecting him. Seoyeon said, careful. Publicly framing the company as unsafe could trigger contract consequences. Suga gave a cold smile. Then let them explain in court why an emergency account threatened a hospitalized artist. Seoyeon went quiet. Jin looked at JUNGKOOK. You decide what is private, not Kang, not Hirin, not us, you. JUNGKOOK looked overwhelmed by the word decide as if it had been taken from him so many times that being handed it back hurt. He looked at RM. Can we stop the next leak? RM did not lie. Not completely. JUNGKOOK looked at Suga. Can we prove the account? Suga said maybe, not fast enough for public damage. JUNGKOOK looked at Jimin last. Can you survive if it's about you? The question made the room tense again. Jimin heard what was under it, not gossip, not scandal, not embarrassment. There was something hidden in Jimin's past or in Osaka or in the days after that Kang believed could be used as a weapon, and JUNGKOOK knew enough to be terrified. Jimin leaned closer. Tell me what it is. JUNGKOOK shook his head faintly. Not here. You promised no more lies. This is not a lie, it is your truth, and I don't know if I have the right to say it in front of everyone. That stopped Jimin. It was the first time JUNGKOOK had not hidden behind protection. He was asking permission. The difference mattered. Jimin looked around the room. RM, Jin, Suga, J-Hope, Taehyung, Seoyeon, the doctor near the monitor, security outside. Too many ears, too many eyes. Jimin nodded once. Then just answer this. Does Kang have something real or something edited? JUNGKOOK's eyes lowered. Both. A cold silence followed. Taehyung whispered, what does that mean? JUNGKOOK looked at Jimin, apology already there. After Osaka, Jimin had a panic episode backstage. Severe. Hirin recorded part of it. Jimin went still. The room shifted around him, but he stood frozen, dragged back into a memory he had buried under choreography, interviews, and denial, the floor under his knees. The noise in his ears, JUNGKOOK's hands trying to steady him, his own voice saying things he did not want anyone to hear. I can't do this. I can't be the reason he gets hurt. Take me off the stage, take me away from him. It had been private terror, not a decision, but edited correctly, it could look like instability, guilt, rejection, weakness, anything Kang wanted. JUNGKOOK's eyes were wet. That is what he threatened me with. Jimin's throat tightened. Jin whispered, Jimina. Jimin lifted one hand, stopping him. He needed air, but he refused to step back. So that's the next leak. Suga's voice was quiet. Likely. J-Hope looked furious now. That was private. That was a medical emergency of its own. Seoyeon said, if they release that, we can pursue legal action. Jimin laughed once, bitter. After everyone sees it. No one answered. JUNGKOOK reached weakly toward him, then stopped halfway, remembering everything Jimin had said about choice. Jimin saw that and took his hand. Not gently enough to be distant, not tightly enough to hurt, just real. They think I'll be ashamed, Jimin said. His voice shook, but it did not break. I was terrified. I said things when I couldn't breathe. I hated myself for being scared. I hated that you got hurt because of me. I hated that part of me wanted to run before I became the reason you stopped standing. If they release that, it will hurt. But it will not be worse than you dying inside silence because you thought my pain had to stay hidden. JUNGKOOK broke completely then, tears sliding silently as he stared at Jimin like he had been waiting weeks to hear those words and had not known it. RM looked away, jaw tight. Jin wiped his face fast. J-Hope covered his mouth. Taehyung cried openly but quietly. Suga lowered his head, eyes closed for 1 second, then opened them with decision. Then we move now, RM nodded. Controlled statement. Member-owned, no company phrasing. Seoyeon objected, that is high risk. RM looked at her. So was trusting Kang. That ended the argument. Jimin looked at JUNGKOOK. What do you want the world to know? JUNGKOOK stared at their joined hands. When he spoke, his voice was weak, but every word was clear. That I am receiving treatment, that the clips are stolen and edited, that no one has permission to use my health or Jimin's private pain as content, and that I'm not alone. He paused, then looked at all of them. Say we are not alone. RM's face softened. We can say that. JUNGKOOK tightened his fingers around Jimin's. And say I chose to tell the truth now. Jimin's eyes burned. Then I'll stand with you, JUNGKOOK whispered. They'll call it a claim. Jimin leaned closer. Let them. The statement was not written in a conference room. It was written in fragments around a hospital bed, with Suga sitting on the floor near an outlet, RM standing against the wall with his phone in both hands, Jin arguing over every word that sounded too polished, J-Hope rewriting sentences to sound human instead of corporate, Taehyung quietly adding the line none of them had the courage to say first, and Jimin seated beside JUNGKOOK, refusing to move even when Seoyeon kept looking at the door like consequences might walk in wearing a suit. JUNGKOOK did not write, but he decided. That mattered. Every time someone softened the truth too much, he opened his eyes and said, no. Every time someone tried to protect him by removing the sharp part, he said, keep it. The doctor allowed the conversation only because JUNGKOOK's monitor had steadied after Jimin sat beside him, a fact nobody commented on but everyone noticed. RM read the draft aloud quietly. JUNGKOOK is currently receiving medical care and is stable under professional supervision. The private clips circulating online were taken and distributed without consent. They are incomplete, edited, and being used to create conflict between people who are united in supporting him. We ask that no one share or amplify stolen private material. Any attempt to expose personal health information or private emotional distress will be met with legal action. Jin interrupted. Too cold. Suga said, it needs legal weight. Jin shot back, legal weight does not mean it has to sound like a printer wrote it. J-Hope rubbed his forehead. Add something from us, not just action. Taehyung looked up, voice quiet. Say we failed each other by hiding too much, but we are fixing it together. The room went silent. Jimin looked at him. Taehyung swallowed hard but did not retreat. People already know something is wrong. If we pretend everything was perfect, it gives the edits power. RM stared at the draft. That line is risky. Jimin said, it's honest. JUNGKOOK nodded faintly. Use it. RM typed it in. Seoyeon looked pained. You are admitting internal conflict. Suga did not look up from tracing logs. The internet already convicted us of worse. Honesty is cheaper. Seoyeon's phone rang again. She stepped into the hall, and the moment she left, the room felt slightly less controlled. Jin looked at RM. Do we trust her? RM answered honestly. I trust that she knows Kang being involved threatens her too. Suga said, that is enough for now. Jimin looked at JUNGKOOK. What about the clip of me? JUNGKOOK's hand moved against his. We don't mention specifics. If we don't, they still have it. If we do, you lose the right to choose how much people know. Jimin studied him. That was new. JUNGKOOK had finally separated protection from control. The choice remained Jimin's. He looked at the draft, then at the members. Add one sentence. Private suffering is not a scandal. J-Hope went still. Jin's face changed with immediate understanding. RM typed it slowly. Suga stopped working and looked at Jimin. You sure? Jimin nodded. If they release it, that sentence becomes mine before it becomes theirs. JUNGKOOK closed his eyes with relief so visible it hurt. Taehyung whispered, that's strong. Jimin did not answer, but he did not reject the words either. RM prepared the post through an official member-shared channel, not the company emergency account. That was the claim, not a denial, not a plea, a line drawn in public by the people Kang had tried to isolate. Seo-yeon returned just as RM hovered over the final confirmation. Her face was pale. Kang knows you're drafting something. RM looked up. How? Because legal just received instruction from his office to block all artist-originated statements until morning. Jin laughed coldly. Morning. Convenient, J-Hope said. The next leak could drop any minute. Seo-yeon nodded once. Exactly. RM's thumb remained above the screen. The room tightened around that tiny distance between decision and action. JUNGKOOK looked at him. Hayoung. RM turned. JUNGKOOK's voice was faint but steady. You protected the group for years by carrying things alone. I did the same and ended up here. Don't make my mistake now. RM's face cracked for the first time that night. Not fully, not dramatically, but enough to show the cost of being the one expected to stand upright when everyone else shook. He nodded once. I won't, he posted. For 3 seconds, nothing happened. Then everything happened at once. Notifications exploded across every phone still active. J-Hope's screen lit non-stop. Jin swore softly. Suga's secured device registered sudden traffic spikes. Seo-yeon's phone rang, then rang again while she ignored it. The statement spread faster than the clips because it had what the leaks did not, a united voice. It did not explain everything. It did not expose JUNGKOOK's diagnosis. It did not name Kang. But it claimed the moral ground before the next weapon could land. JIMIN watched comments flash across J-Hope's screen. Some were supportive, some were confused, some were cruel, but the center had shifted. The stolen clips no longer looked like truth. They looked like violation. Then JUNGKOOK's phone inside the evidence bag lit up again. This time, the internal emergency account sent only one line. You should not have done that. Suga looked at it and smiled without warmth. He's angry, RM said. Good. A second message arrived. You have 10 minutes before Jimin's clip goes public. JUNGKOOK's grip tightened around Jimin's hand. Jimin felt it, but he did not pull away. Can we stop it? Jin asked. Suga's smile vanished. Maybe not. We can make him expose where he is sending it from. Seo-yeon stepped forward. Kang will not personally upload, he'll use a relay. Suga nodded. Unless he is rushing. RM understood. The statement forced him off schedule. Exactly. Suga typed quickly. He expected fear, we gave him public resistance. Now he either backs down and loses control or moves fast and makes mistakes. J-Hope said, what do we need? Suga looked at Jimin. A response. JUNGKOOK's eyes sharpened. No. Jimin looked at him. Kook. No, not with your clip. Jimin leaned closer. You chose truth. Let me choose mine. JUNGKOOK's jaw trembled. I don't want the world seeing you like that. Jimin's voice softened. Neither do I, but the shame is not mine. The room became quiet. That sentence, more than any strategy, was the real claim. JUNGKOOK stared at him, tears rising again because Jimin was walking into the exact fear JUNGKOOK had spent weeks trying to keep sealed away. Not recklessly, not for performance, for ownership. Suga placed a clean device on the table. We send from the public statement account, not the compromised phone. One sentence. It needs to force Kang to respond through the channel he controls. RM looked at Jimin. Your call. Jimin took the device. His hands trembled now and he let them. He did not pretend he was fearless. He typed, we know about the next edited clip. Release it if you want, but private panic caused by a staged threat will not become your weapon. Jin read over his shoulder and inhaled sharply. That names the staging. Seo-yeon said, it's dangerous. Taehyung whispered, it's true. JUNGKOOK looked at Jimin. Are you sure? Jimin answered without looking away from the screen. No, but I'm doing it. He sent it. The response from the emergency account came 20 seconds later. Not a threat this time, a mistake. You cannot prove Osaka was staged. Suga's eyes lit with cold satisfaction. There, RM leaned over. He confirmed the frame. Seo-yeon whispered. He acknowledged Osaka. Suga was already tracing, and he responded directly through the internal account under pressure. Keep him talking. Jimin's pulse hammered, but his voice stayed steady. What do I say? Suga looked at him. Ask what he promised Hirin. JUNGKOOK stiffened. Yoongi. Suga did not soften. That line matters. Jimin looked at JUNGKOOK. Do you know? JUNGKOOK closed his eyes. I think he promised she would be protected if she kept me quiet. RM's face darkened. Jimin typed, what did you promise Hirin for keeping JUNGKOOK silent? The reply came faster this time, sloppy with anger. She was loyal, more than you ever were. Jimin's face drained of color. JUNGKOOK tried to sit up again. Stop! Jimin shook his head, tears in his eyes but control still intact. One more. He typed, loyal to you or loyal to hurting him. This time the pause lasted nearly a minute, then the reply came. He needed discipline. RM said very quietly, "We have him." Suga nodded. "We have enough to trigger external counsel." Seo-yeon looked shaken, "and enough to suspend his access immediately if I escalate to the board." Jin snapped, "Then do it." Seo-yeon stepped into the hall, already dialing. Inside the room, JUNGKOOK looked at Jimin like he did not know whether to apologize, thank him, or beg him to stop standing in the fire. Jimin placed the device down and reached for JUNGKOOK again. "I'm here," JUNGKOOK whispered. "I'm sorry you had to claim pain publicly to save me." Jimin's eyes stayed wet, but his voice was firm. "I didn't do it to save you." JUNGKOOK stared at him. Jimin squeezed his hand. "I did it because it was mine." The next 10 minutes became the longest of the night. The clip of Jimin did not appear immediately, and that delay told them Kang was no longer moving cleanly. Suga tracked bursts of internal traffic. Seo-yeon argued in the hallway with someone high enough to make her voice drop into formal steel. RM coordinated with outside legal through Jin's phone because his own was overloaded. J-Hope stood by the window, watching the crowd of reporters below grow into a restless cluster of lights and movement. Taehyung sat near the end of JUNGKOOK's bed, silent, both hands locked together, waiting for a chance to repair something that could not be repaired quickly. Jimin stayed beside JUNGKOOK. He had no strength left for distance. The public statement had changed the online atmosphere, but not into peace. Nothing about the night was peaceful. Some people praised them for speaking. Some demanded more details. Some accused the statement of being manipulation. Some tried to analyze every word, every comma, every absence, but the stolen clips slowed. The reposts became more hesitant. The phrase, "private suffering is not a scandal," began spreading, first as defense, then as argument, then as shield. Jimin saw it once on J-Hope's phone and looked away before emotion could take him under. JUNGKOOK noticed. "Too much?" Jimin nodded. "Yes." JUNGKOOK's thumb moved weakly against his hand. "You don't have to look." "I know." The simplicity of the exchange almost hurt. They were learning in real time how not to destroy themselves with care. Across the room, RM ended a call and turned to them. "External counsel is engaged. Seo-yeon is pushing for emergency suspension of Kang's system access." Jin said, "Pushing. Board approval required." Suga said from the floor, "Not anymore." Everyone looked at him. He turned his screen slightly. Kang's account just attempted to delete message logs from the emergency system. Automated backup caught the request, time-stamped after our statement. Jin's eyes sharpened. "That's evidence." Suga nodded. "Strong evidence." RM moved toward the door. "Seo-yeon needs this." Suga sent it before RM reached him. "Already done." J-Hope exhaled shakily. "So we're winning." Nobody answered right away. Then JUNGKOOK said, "No, we're still inside it." That was the difference between relief and truth. Kang was cornered, not defeated. Heerin was detained, not fully exposed. JUNGKOOK's diagnosis was still vulnerable. Jimin's clip still existed somewhere. The team's trust had not healed just because they finally faced the same direction. Jimin looked at Taehyung, and Taehyung immediately lowered his eyes. Jimin said his name quietly. "T." Taehyung looked up like he expected punishment. "Yes." Jimin's voice was steady but not soft. "Why did JUNGKOOK ask for you first?" The room went still again. JUNGKOOK closed his eyes. Taehyung's face tightened. "Because he made me promise something before he collapsed." Jimin felt JUNGKOOK's hand tense. "What promise?" Taehyung looked at JUNGKOOK, asking permission this time. JUNGKOOK gave the smallest nod. Taehyung swallowed. "He told me if he lost consciousness again, I had to make sure you didn't blame yourself before anyone explained the diagnosis." Jimin looked down. Of course. Even collapsing, JUNGKOOK had been managing Jimin's guilt. Taehyung continued, voice breaking. "He said you would hear the medical words and turn them into punishment. He said I had to tell you he had been sick before the worst night, before the draft statement, before anything you did or didn't do." Jimin's eyes burned. "You didn't tell me that." Taehyung flinched. "I know." "Why?" "Because when I came out, everything exploded. The messages, the clips, herein the folder. And because I was scared you would not believe me after what I hid." Jimin stared at him for a long moment. Taehyung did not defend himself this time. He did not explain again. He let the silence be ugly. Finally, Jimin said, "I don't forgive you yet." Taehyung nodded quickly, tears forming. "I know. But I understand why he called you." Taehyung broke at that. He covered his face, shoulders shaking. J-Hope moved beside him and put a hand on his back. JUNGKOOK looked at Jimin, gratitude and pain mixed together. Jimin did not look away from Taehyung. "Understanding is not the same as trust." Taehyung nodded through tears. I'll earn it back, however long. Jin watched them with quiet relief, but RM's face stayed troubled. Suga noticed. What? RM looked at his phone. Kang's office just issued an internal notice. Seo-yeon entered at the same time, her expression grim enough to answer before she spoke. Director Kang is denying account misuse. He claims the emergency messages were sent by an unauthorized party using stolen credentials. Jin scoffed. Convenient. Seo-yeon continued. He is also requesting immediate isolation of all members from JUNGKOOK pending security review. Jimin's eyes went cold. No, Seo-yeon looked at him. The request is moving through executive channels. I am fighting it, but if hospital administration accepts company security authority, they may attempt to remove everyone except designated medical contacts. JUNGKOOK's breathing changed. Jimin saw the panic and stood. Look at me. JUNGKOOK did. Jimin leaned over him. No one is removing me because a man who threatened us wrote a memo. RM stepped beside Jimin. No one is removing any of us. Jin moved to the door. Let them try. J-Hope stood with Taehyung. Suga packed his devices and rose slowly, like he was done waiting for permission from people who had lost the right to give it. Seo-yeon looked from one member to another. You need to understand the consequences of refusing executive security instruction. RM turned to her, calm in a way that felt final. No, they need to understand the consequences of giving one. For the first time all night, the members looked like a wall. Not perfect, not healed, not free of guilt, but aligned. That was the claim becoming physical. Kang had tried to define who belonged near JUNGKOOK. Jimin claimed his place. Then the members claimed theirs. Minutes later, the first company security team arrived on the floor. 3 men in dark suits stepped out of the elevator with hospital administration behind them, moving with the confidence of people used to doors opening. Jin was already standing in the corridor. He did not move. The lead guard bowed slightly, formal but firm. We have instructions to secure the patient and limit access. Jin smiled without warmth. The patient has a name. Sir, please step aside. No, the guard's expression tightened. RM stepped out of JUNGKOOK's room and stood beside Jin. Who issued the instruction? Director Kang's office. RM nodded slowly. Then the instruction is compromised. The guard said, We are not authorized to debate. Suga appeared behind RM. Good, then listen. He held up his device. External counsel has documented threats from Kang's emergency account, attempted deletion of logs, and unauthorized access connected to the same chain. If you remove anyone from this room under his instruction, you become part of an active obstruction issue. The guard hesitated. Seo-yeon stepped forward then, holding her phone. Board secretary on speaker. The hallway froze. A woman's voice came through, crisp and awake despite the hour. All security instructions from Director Kang's office are suspended pending review. No staff member is to remove or isolate the artists without direct medical necessity or legal counsel present. The guards exchanged looks. Jin's smile vanished. Leave. They left. Not dramatically, not defeated in public, just forced backward by a line they had not expected the members to hold. Inside the room, JUNGKOOK had heard every word. When RM came back in, JUNGKOOK looked at him with something close to awe. Hae-young. RM walked to the bedside, his face heavy with regret. I should have held that line earlier. JUNGKOOK shook his head weakly. We all should have. Jimin looked between them and the old hurt in him loosened by one small notch, not gone, but moved. Then Suga's device chimed again. He checked it and frowned. Kang's account is offline. J-Hope said. That's good, right? Suga shook his head. No, it means he stopped making traceable mistakes. Seo-yeon's phone buzzed. She read the message and her face changed. Kang has left company headquarters. RM asked. Where is he going? Seo-yeon looked at Jimin, then JUNGKOOK. According to the last access ping toward this hospital. The knowledge that Kang was coming changed the hospital again. The floor had already been sealed, the immediate security threat contained, Hirin detained, and the stolen folder recovered, but Kang was different. Hirin had been obsession with access. Kang was authority with protection. He did not need to sneak through doors if enough people still believed he owned the keys. RM ordered the room cleared of non-essential staff. Jin spoke to the doctor and made sure JUNGKOOK's medical needs came before every confrontation. Suga backed up every log he had gathered to external counsel and 2 separate secure drives. J-Hope closed the blinds so the lights outside could not keep flashing into JUNGKOOK's room. Taehyung filled a cup with water, hands still shaking, then froze because he did not know whether he had the right to bring it to JUNGKOOK. Jungkook saw him hesitate. Taehyung looked up. Jungkook gave a faint nod toward the cup. Taehyung approached slowly and held it while Jungkook took a careful sip through a straw. It was a small act, but in the room it felt like a bridge laid across wreckage. Jimin watched without speaking. It hurt, but not like before. This time he understood the shape of it. Jungkook's trust in Taehyung did not erase him. It revealed how many people Jungkook had been trying to hold together while falling apart himself. Jimin turned away before the thought could become too much. RM noticed. You okay? Jimin gave a tired look. No, RM nodded. Fair. The honesty was almost enough to make Jimin laugh, but he did not have the strength. He looked at RM for a long moment. You should have told me. RM accepted it without defense. Yes, not as leader, as my Hyung. RM's face tightened. I know. Jimin's voice dropped. I thought you didn't trust me to survive the truth. RM looked down. I didn't trust the truth to be delivered without destroying you. That became the same thing. I'm sorry. The apology did not fix it, but it landed cleanly without excuse, and Jimin could respect that. He nodded once, not forgiveness, not dismissal, just receipt. Seo-yeon entered again. Kang is 10 minutes out. Jin looked toward the hallway. He's actually coming here. Seo-yeon nodded. He requested direct access to Jungkook for an executive welfare check. Suga laughed under his breath. That man has no shame. Jungkook's face had gone pale again, but his eyes were focused. He'll try to talk to me alone. Jimin said. He won't get the chance. Jungkook looked at him. He'll say you are making decisions for me. Then you speak for yourself. The words were simple, but Jungkook breathed like they were difficult. Jimin saw the fear there, not fear of Kang's voice, but fear of his own habits. For weeks, Jungkook had been trained by pressure to silence himself for Jimin's sake. Now everyone was asking him to do the opposite while cameras waited outside and his body had barely stabilized. Jimin squeezed his hand once. You don't have to perform strength, just tell the truth you can tell. Jungkook nodded slowly. Stay beside me. I'm not moving. Seo-yeon looked at the two of them, then at RM. If Kang enters, record everything. Suga lifted his phone. Already planned. Jin folded his arms. Can we refuse entry? The doctor answered from near the monitor. As the patient is conscious, he can refuse non-medical visitors. Everyone looked at Jungkook. For the first time, power returned to the bed where it belonged. Jungkook swallowed. Then I refuse him. RM nodded. Good, Suga said. He'll try anyway. J-Hope's face hardened. Then he proves the point. Kang arrived without rushing. That was the first thing Jimin noticed through the room's small window. The man walked down the corridor in a dark coat, silver hair neat, expression controlled, 2 assistants behind him, 1 company security officer at his side. He looked less like someone under suspicion and more like someone arriving to correct disobedient employees. That made Jimin's anger go cold. This was the man who had received Jungkook's complaint, the man who had allegedly let Hee-rin stay close through systems and silence. The man who had threatened Jimin's private panic, Jungkook's career, and the group's unity with the same administrative calm. Kang stopped outside the room. Jin and RM stepped into the hallway first. Suga stayed just inside the door, recording. Seo-yeon stood between the members and Kang, professional posture stiff with tension. Kang looked at RM with practiced disappointment. Namjoon, this has gone far enough. RM did not bow. Director Kang. Kang's eyes flicked to the room where Jimin stood beside Jungkook. His expression barely changed, but Jimin saw the irritation. I need to speak with Jungkook privately. Jin answered. He refused. Kang sighed softly. He is under stress and not in a position to evaluate what is best for himself. Jimin stepped into view then. That line is getting old. Kang looked at him properly for the first time. His gaze was not openly hostile. That was what made it worse. It was clinical, assessing, like Jimin was a variable in a report. Jimin, you are emotionally involved. Step back. Jungkook's voice came from inside the room, weak but clear. No. Kang's eyes shifted past Jimin. Jungkook had pushed himself slightly higher against the pillows with the doctor's help, pale but awake, his hand still in Jimin's. Kang's mouth tightened. You should be resting, Jungkook said, then leave. The hallway went silent. Kang's assistants looked at each other. Seo-yeon's eyes widened slightly. RM stood still, watching Jungkook take back the room 1 sentence at a time. Kang gave a faint smile, the kind used in meetings before someone was quietly crushed. You are confused by fear. The people around you are escalating a private matter into a public crisis. Jungkook's grip tightened around Jimin's hand. No, you did that when you ignored my complaint. Kang's smile faded. Careful. JUNGKOOK flinched at the word, not physically, but emotionally. JIMIN saw it and stepped closer, shoulder aligned with his. JUNGKOOK breathed once, then continued. I sent you evidence. You told me you would handle it. The next day, Hirin repeated words from my complaint. After that, she still had access. My account was compromised, my private conversations were leaked, my medical file was stolen, and your emergency account threatened Jimin. Kang looked at Seo-yeon. This is absurd. Suga's voice came from the doorway. It's recorded. Kang turned to him, irritation sharpening. Yoongi, you are not authorized to handle internal forensic material. Suga's expression did not move. And yet I'm the only reason it hasn't disappeared. RM stepped forward. You are suspended from giving instructions involving us until review concludes. Kang gave a quiet laugh. You do not have the authority to suspend me. Seo-yeon lifted her phone. The board does. That landed. Kang looked at her, and for the first time his control cracked enough to show anger. You are making a career-ending mistake. Seo-yeon's voice stayed steady. Noted. Kang looked back at JUNGKOOK, and his tone shifted, softer, more dangerous. You think they will protect you when this becomes ugly. They will protect the brand than themselves. That is the truth you are too emotional to accept. JUNGKOOK's eyes wavered. Jimin felt the tremor in his hand and knew Kang had found an old bruise. Before Jimin could speak, Taehyung stepped into the doorway. That's what you told all of us, wasn't it? Kang's eyes narrowed. Taehyung's voice shook, but he kept going. Not directly, not always, but you kept making us think the truth would destroy someone else. You told me not to mention the warning because it would complicate security review. You told Namjoon to keep Jimin calm. You told JUNGKOOK's silence would protect Jimin. You turned care into fear. Kang stared at him coldly. You deleted evidence, Taehyung. I would choose your next words carefully. Taehyung went pale, but J-Hope stepped beside him. Threatening him in front of witnesses is a choice too. Jin moved closer to Kang. You're done talking. Kang ignored him and looked at Jimin. You want the truth? Fine. JUNGKOOK did not collapse only because of pressure. He collapsed because everyone around him enabled his fixation on protecting you. You call it loyalty because it flatters you. I call it dependency. The room seemed to snap. JUNGKOOK tried to speak, but Jimin lifted a hand gently, stopping him, not silencing him, asking for one moment. Then Jimin stepped fully into the hallway. His face was pale, eyes wet, but his voice was the clearest it had been all night. You don't get to name what we are just because you found a way to weaponize it. Kang's expression hardened. Jimin continued. Was JUNGKOOK wrong to hide his pain? Yes. Was I wrong to pull away after Osaka instead of facing how scared I was? Yes. Did the members make mistakes by keeping secrets? Yes. But you took those cracks and drove pressure into them until someone ended up in a hospital bed. That is not management. That is control. Kang's jaw flexed. You are speaking from emotion. Good, Jimin said. At least mine is honest. Behind him, JUNGKOOK's eyes filled again. RM looked at Jimin with quiet pride. Jin's face softened just a fraction. Suga kept recording. J-Hope stood straighter. Taehyung cried but did not look away. Kang glanced around and understood the shift. He had come expecting fragments. He found a wall. He took one step back. This is not over. RM answered, no, it's documented. Seo-yeon's phone buzzed. She looked down, then at Kang. Board security is waiting downstairs. They will escort you for questioning. Kang's face tightened completely. For a moment, all the polish vanished and Jimin saw the anger underneath. Not fear, not regret. Anger that the people he had managed like assets were speaking as people. As Kang turned to leave, he looked once more at JUNGKOOK. You will regret choosing this. JUNGKOOK's voice was quiet, but it carried. I already regret choosing silence. Kang stopped for half a second. Then he walked away. Nobody celebrated. The hallway remained tense until the elevator doors closed behind him and the sound faded. Only then did Jimin realize he was shaking. JUNGKOOK reached for him from the bed, and Jimin returned to him immediately. He sat, took his hand, and bent his head for 1 second against the edge of the mattress, not crying loudly, not collapsing, just letting the night pass through him without pretending it did not hurt. JUNGKOOK whispered, You claimed us. Jimin looked up, eyes raw. No. I claimed myself, then I stayed. JUNGKOOK's face broke into something fragile and grateful. RM stepped into the room and looked at all of them. From this point on, we do this clean, legal, medical together. Jin nodded. And after he rests, we fight properly. J-Hope let out a shaky breath. Please let properly include sleep at some point. For the first time all night, a tiny, exhausted sound almost like laughter moved through the room. It did not last. Suga's device chimed again. Everyone turned at once. His expression changed as he read. The clip of Jimin didn't upload. Jimin closed his eyes briefly. JUNGKOOK exhaled, but Suga was not finished. Something else did. RM stepped closer. What? Suga looked at JUNGKOOK, then Jimin, face grim. An anonymous account just posted Kang's private memo about separating the two of you permanently after the tour. JUNGKOOK went completely still. Jimin felt his hand freeze. Suga swallowed. And the memo is dated before Osaka. The memo dated before Osaka changed the meaning of everything that had happened that night. Jimin did not speak first. JUNGKOOK did not speak first either. The room stayed locked in a silence so heavy that even the monitors seemed louder, as if the hospital itself understood the story had just shifted from revenge to premeditation. Suga held the screen in his hand, his eyes moving across the leaked memo again and again, checking the date, the signature block, the formatting, the internal reference number, every detail that could prove whether it was real or forged. RM moved closer, took one look, and his face lost color. Jin stood at the door with one hand still on the frame, jaw tight enough to hurt. J-Hope covered his mouth, eyes shining with anger. Taehyung stared at the floor like the tiles had opened under him. Seoyeon whispered, "That document should not exist." Jimin looked at her slowly. "But it does." JUNGKOOK's fingers had gone cold in Jimin's hand. Jimin looked down at them, then at JUNGKOOK's face, and saw that the fear there was not new, it was recognition. "You knew," Jimin said softly. JUNGKOOK closed his eyes. That was enough. Jimin felt something inside him pull tight, not anger this time, not exactly. It was grief realizing it had been living in the wrong room. "Kook." JUNGKOOK opened his eyes and his voice came out scraped raw. "I didn't know about the memo before Osaka, not then." RM stepped forward. "When did you know?" JUNGKOOK swallowed. "After Hirin was reassigned, I found a screenshot on an old backup. It wasn't complete, just the first page. I thought it was a draft created after everything went wrong." Suga's voice was low. "But the posted version has the date." JUNGKOOK nodded faintly. "Before Osaka." Jin said, "Meaning they were already planning to separate you two before the staged threat." The words fell into the room like a verdict. Before the warning, before the stage incident, before JUNGKOOK's collapse, before Jimin's panic episode, before the clips. Someone had already decided that Jimin and JUNGKOOK together were a problem to be solved, and every disaster after that had been used to justify a solution that had existed from the beginning. Jimin stood up slowly. JUNGKOOK's hand slipped from his, and the loss of contact made JUNGKOOK's eyes flicker, but Jimin did not walk away. He only stood because sitting down felt impossible. So they made the evidence they needed. RM's face hardened. "That is one possible interpretation." Jimin turned to him, eyes blazing. "Namjoon." RM held his gaze, then nodded once. "Yes, that is what it looks like." Seoyeon was already typing, then calling, then sending messages to people whose names no one in the room wanted to hear. "This leak may help us," she said, though even she sounded disturbed. "If the memo is authentic and predates Osaka, Kang's position becomes extremely vulnerable." Jin snapped, "May help us. Someone planned to break them apart and JUNGKOOK ended up here." Seoyeon stopped typing for 1 second. "I know." Jin's voice dropped. "Do you?" She looked at JUNGKOOK then, and some of the crisis manager mask fell away. "I failed to see how deep this went. That is true." Suga looked at the memo again. "The anonymous account is not Hirin. She's detained, her devices are seized." RM said, "Kang, maybe, or someone close to him trying to cut him loose." J-Hope looked confused and furious. "So now they're leaking against each other." Suga nodded. "When people like Kang get cornered, loyalty becomes insurance." Taehyung finally spoke, voice almost gone. "Then there are more files." Everyone looked at him. He lifted his head. "If they planned this before Osaka, the warning message was not the start. There must be drafts, schedule changes, staff notes, camera requests, access approvals." Suga's eyes sharpened. "T is right." Taehyung looked surprised to hear his own point taken seriously. Jimin glanced at him, and for once the look did not cut. It simply acknowledged. That small shift nearly broke Taehyung again. JUNGKOOK tried to push himself higher, but the doctor immediately warned him. "Do not move like that." JUNGKOOK ignored the warning enough to look at RM. "Hayoung, you need to check the tour logistics archive." RM nodded. "We will. Not later." JUNGKOOK's voice shook, but his eyes stayed clear. "Now, if Kang realizes the memo is out, he'll start burning links." Suga was already moving. "I'm pulling what I can before access changes." Seoyeon looked at him sharply. "Do not illegally access company systems." Suga did not look up. "I am accessing materials already shared to artist logistics accounts." RM added, "And external counsel is receiving everything." Seo-yeon pressed her lips together and did not argue. Jimin looked at JUNGKOOK. Why didn't you tell me about the screenshot? JUNGKOOK's face tightened. There it was again, the old wound, the old habit. This time, before he answered, he looked at Jimin properly. Because I was scared you would think I believed it. Jimin's brow pulled together. Believed what? JUNGKOOK's eyes filled. That we were dangerous together. The room softened and sharpened at once. Jimin stared at him, pain moving through his face in waves. Did you? JUNGKOOK's answer came with no pause. No, Jimin breathed out, but relief did not erase the hurt. JUNGKOOK continued, forcing every word past exhaustion. But I was scared because part of me understood why they could make people believe it. I protected you too much. You pulled away too hard. We stopped talking and started reacting. They didn't create every crack. They used the ones we left open. Jimin's eyes turned wet. That doesn't make this our fault. I know, JUNGKOOK whispered. I know that now. The now hurt. It meant he had not always known. It meant he had carried guilt like evidence against himself. Jimin sat back down, slower this time, and took his hand again. Then let's say it out loud. Not for them, for us. JUNGKOOK looked at him. Jimin's voice trembled but stayed clear. What happened to you tonight is not my fault. JUNGKOOK's breath caught. Jimin squeezed his hand. Say it. JUNGKOOK looked like the sentence had to fight its way through every rule he had lived under. Finally, he whispered, What happened to me tonight is not your fault. Jimin closed his eyes. A tear slipped free, but he did not wipe it. What happened to me after Osaka is not your fault either. JUNGKOOK shook once, almost silently. Say it, Jimin said. JUNGKOOK's voice broke. What happened to you after Osaka is not my fault. Taehyung covered his face. J-Hope turned toward the window, crying openly now. Jin pressed his fingers against his eyes. RM stared down, swallowing hard. Suga kept working, but his shoulders had gone tense. The catharsis did not feel clean. It felt like pulling glass from a place no one wanted to touch, but it was necessary. Jimin leaned closer, voice low. We hurt each other by trying not to hurt each other. JUNGKOOK nodded, tears sliding into his hairline. I know. That ends. JUNGKOOK closed his eyes. Yes. The moment almost settled into quiet, but Suga's device chimed again. He looked down and his expression went flat. I found a tour note from 2 days before Osaka. RM moved beside him. What does it say? Suga read silently, then looked at Jimin and JUNGKOOK. It flags excessive emotional dependency between JM and JK as a risk factor. Jin's face darkened. J-Hope whispered, They wrote that. Suga nodded. And recommended a controlled incident response scenario to support future separation protocols. Seo-yeon went still. Controlled incident response scenario is corporate language. It could mean emergency planning. Suga looked at her. Maybe, but attached to the note is a revised stage risk map. Jimin's stomach dropped. JUNGKOOK's eyes opened. RM's voice turned very quiet. For Osaka, Suga nodded once. For Osaka. No one needed the word confession anymore. The documents were beginning to confess on their own. A memo before Osaka. A note naming Jimin and JUNGKOOK's bond as a risk. A revised stage risk map attached to a phrase clean enough for an office, but ugly enough to destroy lives when placed next to what actually happened. Controlled incident response scenario. Jimin stared at Suga's screen without reading every line. He did not want the language inside him. It was too cold, too neat, too far from the sound of JUNGKOOK dragging him away from danger. Too far from the way Taehyung had collapsed under guilt. Too far from JUNGKOOK's body finally refusing to carry another secret. RM requested a full forensic copy through counsel. Seo-yeon escalated again, and this time her voice held no defense of internal process. Jin called their personal legal representative and spoke with a calm that was more frightening than yelling. J-Hope sat down because his knees finally gave up. Taehyung stood near the wall, looking at JUNGKOOK with apology written across every part of him. And JUNGKOOK lay in the bed, silent, eyes open, absorbing the possibility that the moment he had replayed as his own failure might have been part of someone else's design from before the lights ever changed. Jimin felt him slipping inward. He recognized it now. JUNGKOOK's silence was not peace. It was a door closing. Kook! JUNGKOOK did not answer. Jimin leaned closer. Don't go there alone. JUNGKOOK blinked once slowly. I saved you. Jimin's throat tightened. Yes. JUNGKOOK's eyes stayed fixed on the ceiling. But they wanted me to. Nobody spoke. JUNGKOOK's voice became smaller, more distant. They knew I would move. They knew I would not think. They knew if it was you, I would do anything. Jimin squeezed his hand. That is on them. JUNGKOOK swallowed. But they were right about me. That sentence tore through Jimin. No. Jungkook looked at him then, eyes wet and furious with himself. They knew my rule before I admitted it. He knew I would trade myself for you. Jimin stood so fast the chair scraped backward. Stop! Jungkook flinched, and Jimin immediately lowered his voice but not the force behind it. Stop turning their cruelty into proof against your love. Jungkook stared at him. Jimin's face was open now, hurt and scared and angry, all of it visible. You moved because you care. They staged it because they exploit. Those are not the same thing. Don't let them make you ashamed of the only part of that night that was human. Jungkook's lips parted but no sound came. RM looked at Jimin and for once did not interrupt. Jin's eyes softened. Suga's fingers stopped over the keyboard. Taehyung cried silently again. Jimin leaned over the bed. Was it too much? Yes. Did you need help? Yes. Did you hide pain until it hurt everyone? Yes. We will deal with that. I will be angry about that, but saving me was not the crime. Their plan was. Jungkook broke then, not loudly, not dramatically, but completely. His face folded with a grief he had been refusing all night. Jimin held his hand through it, and when Jungkook whispered, "I'm so tired," the whole room seemed to exhale. It was the first honest sentence that did not defend anyone. The doctor stepped closer, her expression firm but gentler now. That is enough for tonight. He needs rest. No one argued immediately because they all knew she was right, but the world outside did not stop because Jungkook needed rest. Kang was in board custody. Hirin was detained. The memo was spreading. The public statement had become a shield but also a spotlight. Reporters outside the hospital had multiplied. Fans were demanding protection. Critics were demanding proof. Anonymous accounts were posting fragments and counterfragments, some real, some manipulated, some bait. The story was no longer contained. RM looked at Jungkook. We'll handle the next part. Jungkook's eyes opened, panic flickering. Don't hide it from me. RM shook his head. We won't, but you do not need to watch every piece cut open in real time. Jungkook looked uncertain. Jimin sat back down. I'll tell you what matters, not everything that screams. Jungkook studied him. Promise. Jimin's answer was quiet. Promise, and if I don't know what matters, I'll ask. That was new too, not grand protection, not silence, a process, an agreement, a way to stay connected without drowning each other. The doctor gave them 3 more minutes. 3 minutes in a night that had stolen hours. Jin used his minute first. He came to the bedside and placed a hand on Jungkook's shoulder, careful, steady. You scared me. Jungkook tried to apologize, but Jin shook his head. Not now, later when I can lecture you properly and you can't escape. Jungkook's mouth trembled with something almost like a smile. Okay. Jin's eyes filled. Rest, that is your only job. J-Hope came next and bent over him, voice shaking. Kept saying this couldn't be happening, but it was happening and I was useless. Jungkook whispered, you were there. J-Hope shook his head. Next time I'll be earlier. Jungkook's eyes softened. There shouldn't be a next time. J-Hope nodded, wiping his face. Then I'll help make sure there is. Suga did not come close at first. He stood at the end of the bed, arms folded, face unreadable. Then he said, you are terrible at asking for help. Jungkook gave a weak breath that might have been a laugh. Hayoung. No, listen, terrible, historically bad. Jungkook closed his eyes, exhausted but listening. Suga's voice softened by 1 degree. But you did it tonight, late, messy, half-conscious, still counts. Jungkook looked at him. Suga nodded once. Keep doing it earlier. Jungkook whispered, I'll try. Suga accepted that because try was more honest than a dramatic promise. RM came last among the older members. He stood beside the bed for a moment, struggling with words he usually had too many of. Finally, he said, I thought leadership meant holding the worst truth until I could make it safer. Jungkook looked at him. RM's voice broke slightly. I was wrong, I'm sorry. Jungkook's eyes filled again. Hayoung, I kept things too. I know, we will fix both. RM placed a hand over Jungkook for 1 second, then stepped back before emotion overtook him. Taehyung remained near the wall. He did not approach until Jungkook looked at him and said, Taehyung shook his head, already crying. I don't deserve a minute. Jungkook's voice was weak but direct. Come here. Taehyung moved like every step hurt. When he reached the bedside, he could not meet Jimin's eyes. Jungkook said, you made mistakes. Taehyung nodded hard. Yes, you hid things. Yes, you also stayed. Taehyung covered his mouth. Jungkook's eyes were wet. Both are true. Taehyung sobbed once, quiet but sharp. I am so sorry. Jungkook looked at Jimin. Taehyung followed his gaze, terrified. Jimin took a long breath. Not ready to say it's okay. Taehyung nodded quickly. I know, but I'm glad you stayed. Taehyung broke harder at that than he had at blame. He bowed his head near the bed, not touching Jungkook until Jungkook moved his fingers toward him. Taehyung took them carefully like he was holding something he had once nearly dropped. The doctor finally stepped in. Time! Everyone began to move out slowly, unwillingly. Jimin stayed seated. The doctor looked at him. JUNGKOOK tightened his hand around Jimin's. Can he stay until I sleep? The doctor considered the monitor, then Jimin's face, then the exhausted room. Only if he stays quiet. Jimin nodded. I can do quiet. Jin murmured from the doorway, first time for everything. It was small, but the tiny breath of laughter that followed felt like proof they were still alive under the wreckage. One by one, the members left the room. RM paused at the door and looked back at Jimin. No words, just a nod. Jimin returned it. The door closed. The room dimmed. JUNGKOOK and Jimin were alone again, but this time the silence did not feel like a trap. It felt like a fragile ceasefire. JUNGKOOK's eyes were half closed. Are you still angry? Jimin answered honestly. Yes. Are you leaving? No, JUNGKOOK breathed out shakily. Okay. Jimin leaned back, still holding his hand. Sleep. JUNGKOOK's eyes fluttered. If I sleep, don't disappear. Jimin's face tightened with pain. I'm right here. JUNGKOOK whispered. Say it again. Jimin leaned closer. I'm right here. JUNGKOOK finally let his eyes close. His breathing evened slowly, not instantly, not perfectly, but enough for the monitor to settle into a steadier rhythm. Jimin watched him fall asleep and felt the night press down all at once. The leaked clips, the diagnosis, the memo, the staged warning, the deleted evidence, the threats, the claim, the confrontation, all of it moved through him, too much for one body, but he stayed. He did not perform strength. He did not pretend forgiveness had arrived. He simply stayed because this time staying was not a sacrifice. It was a choice. Outside the room, Suga sat in the private hallway with his laptop open, RM beside him, both faces lit by the screen. Jin stood guard near the elevator. Jae-hope and Taehyung sat together on the bench, exhausted into silence. Seho-yeon returned from a call and stopped in front of RM. The board has placed Kang on immediate administrative leave pending investigation. RM closed his eyes briefly. Good. Seho-yeon hesitated. There's more. Suga looked up. What? She held out her phone. On the screen was a message from external counsel. The anonymous account that leaked Kang's memo had sent a second file. This one was not a memo. It was a schedule list, and at the top, marked 2 days from now, was an entry titled, Final Separation Announcement Rehearsal. Morning did not arrive gently. It came through the hospital windows as a dull gray wash, exposing faces that looked older than they had hours before. Jimin had not slept. He had sat beside JUNGKOOK through every shift in breathing, every small movement, every nurse check, every moment when JUNGKOOK stirred and searched for him before settling again. By 7:12 a.m., the sky outside had lightened, but the night had not ended. It had simply changed clothes. The hospital floor was now guarded by board-approved security. External counsel had taken over evidence preservation. Kang was suspended but not yet formally charged. Hee-rin was still being questioned, and the anonymous account had dropped a second file that made every person in the hallway understand one thing clearly. The plan to separate Jimin and JUNGKOOK had not been a possible response. It had been scheduled. Final separation announcement rehearsal. 2 days from now. Not a crisis note. Not a contingency. A rehearsal. RM read the entry until his eyes hurt. Jin wanted names attached to every person invited. Suga had already extracted the metadata and found that the calendar event had been created before JUNGKOOK saw the fake draft statement. Jae-hope kept asking the same question in different ways. How many people knew? Taehyung sat very still, because every new file made his deleted message feel less like one mistake and more like one piece of a machine he had not recognized in time. Seho-yeon confirmed the event belonged to a restricted communications calendar. She looked sick when she said it. Only executive communications, artist management leads, and crisis directors could see this. Jin's voice was flat. Could you? Seho-yeon held his gaze. No, I was not invited. Suga said, that may be why you're still useful. She did not argue. Inside the room, JUNGKOOK woke shortly after sunrise. His eyes opened slowly, unfocused at first, then locked onto Jimin. His lips moved. Jimin leaned forward immediately. I'm here. JUNGKOOK blinked, and for 1 second he looked relieved enough to break Jimin all over again. Then memory returned. Hospital, diagnosis, Hee-rin, Kang, memo, threat. Jimin saw each piece land behind JUNGKOOK's eyes. Don't try to sit up, Jimin said. JUNGKOOK swallowed. What happened? Jimin did not say nothing. He did not say later. He did not decide the truth was too sharp for morning. He took a breath and kept the promise. Kang was suspended pending investigation. Herein is detained. The folder is safe. Your diagnosis has not been leaked. My panic clip has not surfaced, but the anonymous account sent another file. JUNGKOOK stared at him. About what? Jimin's throat tightened. A scheduled rehearsal for a separation announcement. JUNGKOOK went completely still. For a second, the monitor betrayed him before his face did. Jimin squeezed his hand. Breathe. JUNGKOOK closed his eyes and obeyed with difficulty. When? 2 days from now. JUNGKOOK's voice was barely audible. They were going to make it official. They were going to try. JUNGKOOK opened his eyes. Did you see the wording? Not yet. I need to. Jimin wanted to say no. He wanted to put his body between JUNGKOOK and every sentence written by people who had studied his heart like a vulnerability. But he heard his own words from the night before. You do not free someone by taking away their choice. He nodded slowly. Okay, but not alone. JUNGKOOK gave the smallest nod. Jimin called RM in. The members entered quietly, one by one, carrying exhaustion like another person in the room. The doctor allowed a limited discussion after checking JUNGKOOK and warning them that any spike would end it. Suga placed the file on a tablet and handed it to Jimin first. You don't have to read it out loud. JUNGKOOK said, please. Jimin looked at him. JUNGKOOK's eyes were afraid but steady. I need to hear what they plan to make us say. So Jimin read. The announcement draft framed everything as mutual, mature, necessary. It said Jimin and JUNGKOOK had chosen to reduce private and professional overlap for health, focus, and group harmony. It said the decision came after deep personal reflection. It said there was no conflict. It said both artists remained supportive of each other. It was clean, respectful, empty. The kind of statement that would have buried a forced separation under soft words until everyone thanked them for handling it gracefully. Jimin's voice shook halfway through, but he kept reading. JUNGKOOK listened without moving, tears sliding silently. When Jimin finished, nobody spoke. Then JUNGKOOK whispered, they wrote my goodbye for me. That was the sentence that broke the room. J-Hope turned away. Jin put both hands on his head. RM sat down slowly like his legs had lost their authority. Taehyung whispered, I'm sorry, again so quietly it almost disappeared. Suga closed the tablet. They don't get to use it. JUNGKOOK's eyes stayed on Jimin. Did part of you want that? The question stunned everyone. Jimin looked at him, hurt flashing before understanding. JUNGKOOK was not accusing him. He was asking from the darkest place Kang had built inside him. Jimin answered with care. After Osaka, part of me wanted distance because I was scared. Not because I wanted to leave you, because I thought staying near you meant watching you get hurt for me again. JUNGKOOK's breath trembled. Jimin continued, but I should have said that. I should not have made you guess. My fear became silence. Your fear became sacrifice. They used both. JUNGKOOK nodded slowly, absorbing the answer like medicine that still hurt going down. I thought if I agreed to disappear first, you would hate me and be safe. Jimin's face tightened. That was stupid. JUNGKOOK blinked. The bluntness caught him off guard. Jimin leaned closer. I'm serious, stupid, painful, very you, but stupid. A tiny, broken breath escaped JUNGKOOK, almost a laugh, almost a sob. Jin muttered, finally someone said it. The tension cracked just enough for air to enter. Then Jimin's voice softened. And me avoiding you was stupid too. JUNGKOOK whispered, very you. Jimin gave him a tired look. Don't get brave just because you're in a hospital bed. JUNGKOOK's eyes warmed for the first time since waking. It was fragile, barely there, but it was his. The doctor watched the monitor and did not interrupt because the numbers stayed steady. RM leaned forward, elbows on knees. We need to decide what we do with the separation file. Seo-yeon answered from near the door. Legally, it should go to council and the board first. Jin looked at her. And publicly? Publicly, nothing yet. If you release too much without verification, Kang can frame it as retaliation during a health crisis. Suga nodded reluctantly. She's right, the file is explosive, but timing matters. J-Hope asked. So we just let people keep guessing. RM looked at JUNGKOOK. No. We follow JUNGKOOK's statement from last night. We protect privacy. We confirm investigation. We don't let stolen or leaked files decide our pace. Jimin added, and we do not let a forced separation draft become our story. JUNGKOOK looked at him. What is our story then? Jimin did not answer immediately. He looked around at the members. RM, who had hidden truth to manage fear. Jin, who had held anger like a shield. Suga, who had turned cold focus into protection. J-Hope, who had cried and still stood guard. Taehyung, who had failed and stayed anyway. JUNGKOOK, who had nearly lost himself trying to save everyone else. Then he looked down at their joined hands. Our story is unfinished. Jungkook's eyes filled again, but this time the emotion was different. Not collapse, not panic, grief with space inside it. The doctor finally ended the discussion and asked everyone except one support person to leave so Jungkook could rest before additional tests. Jungkook chose Jimin without hesitation this time. No one flinched. Taehyung looked down, but not with the same wound as before. RM nodded. Jin said, "Call if anything changes." Suga pointed at Jungkook. "Sleep, that is not a suggestion." J-Hope whispered, "We're outside." The room emptied again. Jungkook looked exhausted, but his eyes stayed open. "Are you scared of the tests?" Jimin asked. Jungkook gave a tiny nod. "Yes." Jimin's hand tightened. "Me too." Jungkook looked at him. "You don't have to say that to make me feel better." I'm scared, I'm angry. I don't know what happens after today, I don't know what recovery looks like. I don't know what the company does next. I don't know what people will believe, I only know I'm not letting other people make our choices while we're too scared to talk. Jungkook stared at him, then whispered, "That sounds like a vow." Jimin's eyes softened. "It's a warning." Jungkook's mouth moved into the faintest smile. Then his face grew serious again. "If my recovery takes a long time," Jimin cut in gently, "then it takes a long time. If I can't perform for a while, then you recover. If people get angry, they can be angry." Jungkook swallowed. "If being close to me makes things harder for you," Jimin leaned in, "then we stop confusing hard with wrong." Jungkook closed his eyes and tears slipped again, but he was breathing steadily. Jimin stayed beside him as morning deepened. Outside the room, RM received a call from external counsel. The anonymous account had sent a third message, but this one was different. Not a file, not a threat. A location. Seoyeon read it once and went pale. Suga looked over her shoulder. Jin stepped closer. J-Hope whispered, "What is it?" RM looked toward Jungkook's room, then at the others. "It says there's a backup archive in Studio C." Taehyung's face drained. "Our Studio C," Suga nodded slowly. "And it says we have until noon before Kang's people get there." Studio C was not just a room. To the public, it was another polished company space where songs became content, where behind-the-scenes clips caught laughter, where rehearsals looked difficult but beautiful. To the members, Studio C was where arguments had turned into harmonies, where late nights had blurred into morning, where Jungkook had recorded guide vocals with his hood pulled low, where Jimin had sat on the floor after practice and pretended he was not exhausted, where Taehyung had slept on a couch with one arm over his face, where RM had rewritten lyrics until dawn, where Suga had disappeared into headphones, where Jin had brought food nobody asked for but everyone ate, where J-Hope had counted beats until the room obeyed him. If there was a backup archive hidden there, it meant the plan had not only followed them through schedules and hospital systems, it had entered the place they considered theirs. Jimin heard about the message when RM came back in at 8:03 a.m. He knew from RM's face that the next problem had arrived before the previous one finished bleeding into memory. Jungkook was asleep again, finally, shallow but stable. Jimin stood carefully without releasing his hand at first, then placed it gently under the blanket. "What?" he whispered. RM kept his voice low. "Anonymous account says there's a backup archive in Studio C. We have until noon." Jimin stared at him. "Archive of what?" "Likely files Kang or Heerin stored, maybe original clips, maybe proof, maybe bait." Jimin looked at Jungkook. Leaving him now felt like tearing himself in half. RM saw the conflict and did not rush him. That mattered. "You don't have to go," RM said. Jimin looked back at him. "Is that leadership or protection?" RM absorbed the question. "Choice." Jimin held his gaze. The answer was clean. No hidden pressure, no manipulation, no soft cage. Choice. Jimin looked again at Jungkook, sleeping under hospital lights after a night that had taken too much from him. Then he looked at the closed blinds, beyond which reporters waited for another image, another wound, another signal they could turn into theory. "If I stay, I'll keep watching him breathe and call it helping." RM's face tightened with understanding. Jimin continued, "If I go, I might help bring back the proof that lets him breathe without this hanging over him. You don't have to prove your place by going." "I know." That was the difference. He did know. He was not chasing Heerin alone. He was not walking into a trap to be loved. He was making a decision with open eyes, surrounded by people who now had to earn trust through action. Jimin looked at Jungkook one more time. "You stay here with him," RM nodded. "Me and Jin, doctor approved 2 support people outside rotation. Yoongi wants to go to Studio C because of the archive. Hosak is going too. RM paused. Jimin understood. Taehyung would want to go because guilt pushed him toward danger. T stays here, Jimin said. RM raised an eyebrow. You're deciding. Jimin's mouth tightened. I'm requesting. He needs to face JUNGKOOK awake, not keep trying to pay with panic. RM nodded slowly. I agree. Jimin took a hospital notepad from the side table and wrote a short message. Not dramatic, not full of apologies, just enough. I'm going with Yoongi and Hosok to check Studio C. Namjoon and Jin are here. Taehyung is here too. I am not leaving you. I am choosing one part of the fight. I'll come back. He placed it beside JUNGKOOK's phone-free bedside, where JUNGKOOK would see it when he woke. RM read it without commenting, but his eyes softened. Jimin stepped into the hallway. Jin was waiting there with coffee no one had asked for. He handed one to Jimin. You look awful. Jimin accepted it. Thanks. That was not a compliment. I know. Jin's face softened, then hardened again. Be careful. Jimin nodded. Don't let him wake up scared. Jin's answer came immediately. Never again. Those two words carried more than promise. They carried accountability. Suga was already near the elevator with J-Hope, both dressed in borrowed caps and masks arranged by board security to avoid the main crowd. Taehyung stood a few feet away, clearly struggling. I should go, he said as soon as Jimin approached. Jimin shook his head. No. Taehyung looked wounded but did not argue immediately. Because you don't trust me, Jimin answered honestly. Partly. Taehyung flinched, but Jimin continued. Partly because JUNGKOOK needs to wake up and see you did not run into danger to punish yourself. Stay, tell him what you should have told him before, then tell him what you need to tell me later. Taehyung's eyes filled. Will you listen later? Jimin looked at him for a long moment. Yes. Taehyung bowed his head, accepting the mercy without pretending it erased anything. J-Hope placed a hand on Jimin's shoulder. Ready? Jimin looked back once toward JUNGKOOK's room. No, Suga said. Good. Ready people miss traps. They took the service route out of the hospital, not the lobby. Board security cleared a path through the underground exit, and for the first time since the night began, Jimin stepped into morning air. It was cold, too normal, too indifferent. Somewhere above them, cameras shouted at the wrong doors. Somewhere online, millions of people were arguing about fragments. Somewhere inside the company, people were deleting, denying, repositioning. The car ride to Studio C was silent except for Suga's typing and J-Hope's uneven breathing. Jimin watched the city pass by through tinted glass and felt the strange emptiness that comes after too much adrenaline. He thought of JUNGKOOK waking to the note. He thought of the separation draft. He thought of Hirin saying JUNGKOOK needed discipline. He thought of Kang saying they would regret choosing this. He thought of his own words, private suffering is not a scandal. For the first time, he wondered what recovery would demand when the crisis ended. Not the dramatic part, the quiet part, the trust rebuilding, the anger, the therapy he would probably resist, the conversations JUNGKOOK would try to avoid, the apology Taehyung still owed, the guilt RM had to stop dressing as responsibility, the way all of them would need to learn that loyalty without truth was just another kind of danger. Studio C was sealed by board security when they arrived, but the hallway outside looked wrong. Not visibly damaged. Worse, too clean, the access panel had been reset. The camera above the door pointed 2 degrees away from its usual angle. Suga noticed immediately. Someone was here. J-Hope whispered, already? Suga checked the lock log on a secured tablet provided by counsel. Last entry at 6:48 a.m., Jimin's pulse jumped. Who? Suga's expression darkened. Kang's assistant. They entered carefully. Studio C looked untouched at first. The couch, the console, the microphones, the water bottles from some older session nobody had cleaned properly. The corner lamp JUNGKOOK liked because it was dimmer than the ceiling lights. Jimin felt the room hit him in the chest. This place had held so many versions of them, and now it felt like someone had searched through their memories with gloves on. Suga moved straight to the equipment rack. J-Hope checked behind the couch and under the small table. Jimin stood in the center, listening to something he could not explain. Where would someone hide an archive? J-Hope asked. Suga said, not where it belongs. Jimin looked at the corner lamp. JUNGKOOK had once joked that if the company ever lost his guide tracks, they were probably hiding where the light was least annoying. He walked toward it slowly. Behind the lamp was a narrow acoustic panel slightly misaligned. Jimin touched the edge. It shifted. Yoongi, Suga crossed the room. Together they pulled the panel free. Behind it was a small external drive taped to the wall wrapped in black fabric. J-Hope exhaled. Please tell me that's it. Suga did not touch it barehanded. He photographed it, bagged it, then connected it through a forensic blocker. The screen loaded slowly. Folders appeared. Osaka, hospital, JM panic. JK medical, separation drafts, Hirin audio, Kang directives. Then one folder at the bottom made Jimin's stomach drop. Live contingency if JK survives. J-Hope whispered, if. Suga's face went cold in a way Jimin had never seen. He opened the folder. Inside was a single video file scheduled for automatic release at 12:00 p.m. The thumbnail showed JUNGKOOK from inside the hospital room, asleep, vulnerable, filmed from an angle none of them had noticed. Jimin stopped breathing. Suga checked the timestamp and went pale with rage. This was recorded after Kang left. J-Hope's voice shook. But the room was secured. Jimin's phone buzzed. A message from RM. JUNGKOOK is awake. He saw your note. He's calm. Then a second message came immediately after. We found a device in the flower arrangement delivered this morning. Jimin stared at the screen and the room around him seemed to narrow to one point. Suga looked at him. What? Jimin lifted his eyes, and the catharsis of the night turned into a new kind of fear. The archive wasn't the final trap, he said. It was a timer.